Right, this is going to be the newest episode of Summoning Insight, the original and best League of Legends podcast. That's just a subjective opinion, but I get to have it.
And
So that is my
most
opinion.
viewed.
There you go. Also most viewed. That's actually factually also provable. Yeah. Unless someone comes forward with evidence that's just otherwise. Our data suggests that, yes, we are the number one. So obviously we said we would in the off-season keep doing episodes, right? To be fair, there is so much roster drama and roster mania because obviously the actual date when people can sign the contract hasn't happened yet. Actually, we could also have done this in past off-seasons. It's just that you have to keep track of like all the latest roster rumors and stuff. But actually, one thing you were pointing out to me before is I noticed the last few years, even though it's very simple work, people have done the smart thing of doing like master lists that you put on a website. So Deserto does one every year, for example. And as far as I know, I doubt they get a single rumor themselves. You just collate all the ones that are in the community and you look at like, but it's actually super useful to have the master list though, because I know I was telling you, I've been following the Korean scene, but via a Stan update that just puts like the latest ones, and half the time it's just like they have some stand shit and they're like, nah, I wish this guy joined this, I ship him with this other guy. So I have to endure that as well. So I actually like that we've got like a master list now. We can discuss all the potential moves. Because actually the roster mania is crazy for LCK this time around. Like, literally teams one day to another are going from like, what the fuck? They have this guy to like, oh my God, super team, world's guaranteed, Grand Slam. Like the whiplash in LCK as well. Like, put it this way, I'll say this, Monty, this LCK off season actually reminds me of what a nightmare it is to follow the LPL off season, because you know the LPL is the league where they'll make like 3/5 of like the most insane lineup, but then like position 5 will be like, should he even be allowed to play professionally? Like they always just do crazy rosters. And so spoiler, I'll just hint, there's already a very similar Gen G-esque lineup where in the first 4 names you're like, give them the golden road, then name 5 you're like, what are we doing here? Like, you know, like I actually saw someone make a joke online, but it's true. You know, when people make those things, Monty, that little game where they go construct a roster using like $10 and they have that amount, right? And famously, the rookie mistake is you just go and use as much of the $10 to buy the really expensive players like Chovy or whatever. But at the end, it means you have to put like the worst player on the list as the 5th. Like, I feel like some GMs are doing this, Monty. Like, they're actually using their budget that way, bro. Like, so let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about this episode, believe it or not.
Yeah, there is. And, you know, we are going to get into all the roster rumors. To touch on your point, look, the LPL roster rumors are going to always be more opaque because China's more of a closed off scene. It is November 19th. So what that means, guys, is that this is the first day that a lot of players are going to be released from their old contracts. So this is when the signing can really actually begin, which as a result, by the time you hear this episode...
Don't get confused, for example, when you saw the post today saying Gen G releases all their players. They have to say that, don't they? That's just something they have to say. Even if they plan to sign them all, they have to say that anyway, guys. That doesn't really mean none of them are in Gen G. Like, don't get tricked by that. You know?
Yeah. And also, you know, by the time this episode comes out, Zeus might have re-signed with T1. He's kind of the last one waiting to go. But there's also rumors with Zeus that we'll get to that are attaching him to HLE, which would be crazy.
Spicy. Especially if you were someone, Monty, imagine this. Imagine if you were someone who thought that actually people had slightly over-indexed on, say, the mid lane in T1, and they didn't actually appreciate the top lane enough. Well, you know what? 2 things. One, wouldn't it be just what the doctor ordered to send Thorin to that team so they can learn the value of top lane? And then secondly, imagine having a life with fucking Zeus. That would be incredible. So already that teased me, but I have to wait on that one because you just know last second it might just sign a T1 again and then ruin the whole fucking the drama. But spicy as fuck, though. By the way, I've also never seen an off-season like this, Monty, where more like 1A players were rumoured to go to like rival teams. Like, Korea isn't usually like that, bro. Korea usually is like, at the end of your career, you do the move. If you're Death or something like that, or BDD or whatever. But usually if you're the star, you stay put, and then you're the one waiting for the either great or random 5th player to be added. It's kind of crazy, the potential like moves between teams. Like, basically, if people don't know, it's actually only people like Faker aren't on the board, pretty much. It's ridiculous. Like, most of the other massive names are completely in play. Hence why, by the way, before we even get to it, there's about 4 different teams are like just living on the dream that if they're the one team that gets ruler, they can do everything. But if they don't, their whole offseason's fucked. Like, it's outrageous the way people have like stacking the deck. Like, there's some massive gambles going on right now.
There's also some really interesting players that are allegedly returning to Korea as well from the LPL.
Did I always say, I know obviously at the time there was a better player, but did I not always say on this show, Everyone's going, Berserker, he is sick. He should go to Korea. He could be on like KT or Jinji. And I always said, what team did I always say about you? I said, no, if you go to Korea, you're going to be on Brion or Kwangdong Freaks. And what do you know? What do you know? How's my Berserker today, dickhead? Bro, like that was one they always told me. Every LCS fan told me, this guy's cracked. He's going back to it. It's like, he's not. You have to understand Koreans, they just go, oh, wow, he's beating up on the kiddie pool. You know what I mean? They don't even fucking respect the LCS. What are you talking about? Because yeah, saw that when he's supposed to go to Kwangdong, yeah. It's a pretty big move though on paper if you're an LCS fan.
Yeah. And look, there's a lot of players that are coming back from various other regions that are going to be really exciting. On the whole, I mean, the problem with the LCK has always been that there's been a pretty distinct cutoff in terms of quality between these two teams, which obviously the LCK is trying to solve with its new format coming into this year, especially as we get into summer and the league is bifurcated into the good teams and the shitter teams. But that said, you know, there are some good players that are going to be returning, and there are going to be, I think, some pretty competitive mid-table rosters, which is good because it won't just be good teams rolling bad teams for half the game.
Sure.
So, yeah. But before that, Thorin, I hate to inform you, but Riot Games has been up to their usual shenanigans again.
You know what? The worst thing about this one, Monty, is this might actually be one of the worst fan responses in years. Because I actually feel like the last few years, generally, fans have done a decent job of sort of combating some of the Riot nonsense and figuring out, like, you know, when they're talking shit or when the LCS Commission not doing anything. Bro, you know the most disturbing thing about this? I know that obviously you have to seed this topic that they're basically killing the LPL English broadcasting. People don't know. Like, look, you can sort of say that the writing was on the wall when you consider how they like downsized it over the years, didn't invite anyone in fucking Worlds, and then eventually it was like Nymera just going like, I'll turn it on and do some of your official matches in the best league in the world so someone's watching the game. You can already sort of tell it was going a bad way. But the problem I always had was you would have thought just for vanity alone, you'd never give up like a major like English language broadcast on like, remember this team, Monty, if like, Faker doesn't do all that shit, the news of this offseason is, yeah, you know, the reason that won Worlds, you can't watch it as someone who speaks English. Like, what? So they've gone to a core stream only model, right? This is where I feel so disappointed, Monty, because the amount of people I've seen who were sort of like, who gives a fuck? I prefer core streams anyway. Or probably the worst take. I actually think this is one of the worst takes I've ever seen, Monty, is the one that goes, because you know last season, Dom was like, maybe I'll run an LPL broadcast. They take that as if like, this is where you know people who don't contribute are just leeches, Monty. They took Dom potentially spitballing that idea as like, he should just run the broadcast. Like, yeah, Dom, a guy who used to just play the game, who Mark Merrill was like, glad you have a game to make a career of. He should himself foot the bill to run a broadcast for you, which, are you ready? This is the part that blows my mind, Monty. Would compete with his own core stream, the main and only source of his income, you morons. Like, why would he? That's the obvious question. You won't pay to watch it. Most of you won't even watch it. Riot won't pay to fund it. But Dom should just go, are you ready? You know the one that kills me inside, Monty? I've seen people go, just get sponsors. If just get sponsors was a thing, the Riot broadcast would still be around, wouldn't it? As far as I can tell, Monty, we're the only people who can check slots. Just get sponsors. Joke there being, we can't get any of that filthy fucking investment money. Therefore, we, you know, either side, you get fucked on one end. You either get the investment money or no sponsors, or you all sponsor, no investment. So, but I actually think, to start there, Monty, I think it would be incredibly unreasonable and insanely charitable from Dom if he decided to run his own LPL stream. Like, I don't expect him to do that at all, man. I thought it was a cool idea before because it showed me how much he loves the league, but like, I definitely don't expect him to do that. Why the fuck should he?
I mean, it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is obviously a lot to an individual streamer. Well, some individual streamers, but it's not a lot to Riot Games. And I think that's what's the disappointing thing. And I think we do need to go back and talk about what happened with the LPL English broadcast historically, because the reason why people are mad is because Riot has completely fucked this up once again. And what happened is we have to rewind all the way to the beginning of the LPL in China and where it started, because in like the early 20 teens, so we're talking like 2014 here, it was actually a community run effort called LPL EN. The stream was twitch.tv.
It was quite literally people like Kelsey Moser running it and then getting like Froscore and perhaps all them people to do the casts. Like, yeah, it was completely computer run. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't think they just reached out to someone in the LPL, just got the feeds. Basically, that was about it. There was no Riot involvement as far as I know, right?
Yeah, basically they had themselves to go out and make the contacts, get the feeds. Riot had no interest, Tencent had no interest in running this. And so what happened was that there were a lot of up and coming English language casters or people within the scene. Remember, I mean, the list of people that has come from the LPL English stream over the years is absolutely immense. It has been the primary source of League of Legends broadcast talent, which is one of the biggest deals with shutting it down. Because regardless of whether you think anybody watched it, because people are saying, Thorin, well, I didn't watch the English LPL stream. I was only watching the co-casters like Cadril and Dom. You were watching it because that English broadcast was piped into your fucking ears. Do you think co-streamers talk all the time? They don't. They would lose their voice if they were co-streaming for 12 hours a day, every day. They are reaction content. Maybe good reaction content. I'm not saying that pejoratively or negatively, but what I am saying is that they are at its core reaction content, which means there has to be content to exist first. And while they've said, oh, we are going to get the clean feeds in, this is an announcement that is inherently going to make the co-streams that you watch worse. It is. Especially because many of the LPL casters were very good casters. Also, the world's stupidest take that I hear, which is like, the LPL casters are shit. Actually, my personal opinion is that some of those LPL casters were among the best casters in League of Legends.
Broadcasts. Yeah,
so what happened was it started as a community-run effort. Then it got taken over, right, and professionalized. And this was all run by Tencent out of China, okay? So then we get the era where people are actually... Actually, that's not true. We got the era where the Riot was broadcasting it out of Australia. So there was a studio in Australia where they had the OPL before they killed the OPL, which was the Australian Professional League.
They just did both from the studio, right?
Yes, they did OPL and LPL from that studio. That's where people like Atlas came from, guys.
Wasn't that even where Spawn came from at one point in time?
Yes.
Was he just like working in the league? I think that's the other thing, as you're hinting at. The other thing that's mental is they're doing that thing, Monty, where it's like, but why would I need the LPL? I've got like Atlas and Dagda and Raz and it's like, no, for the LPL, you moron. They wouldn't exist as casters in other regions if they didn't get their start with the LPL. You're doing my engine, guys, please.
How about Papa Smithy? How about pastry time? You know, where the fuck, you know, Emily Rand, even if she wasn't casting, was known for following the Chinese League of Legends scene back in the day, which again would not have really been possible without English language support or English language broadcasting. You know, you have all the good casters, you know, Hysterics, Munchables, these guys who have come out of that scene, who have been, you know, trickling into Europe. Bunch of the people that have come up in and now are casting in Korea came up through the LPL.
Even though fans won't know, because it's a bit of an old school reference, if you are an old school S5 fan, you will also know, friend of the show, one of our favourites, one of the sleeper geniuses of league thinking, Clement Chu, was the guy who ran the broadcast for many, many years.
Yes,
and was one of the main links, because obviously he can speak Mandarin, but to the Chinese community. Yeah, he was enormous.
So, you know, there have just been so many of these personalities that have developed there. So it went to Australia, then it got taken over and sent to China itself, and it was run out of Shanghai. So people were literally living in Shanghai to cast this league. Then COVID happened, and it kind of had to be done remotely from that point in time. And as of last year, you guys will remember that there was this crisis because basically Tencent said, fuck this. We're not going to be doing this anymore. We're not paying for it. So what Riot did was, in an emergency situation, because basically Tencent just pulled the plug. And we gave Riot credit for this at the time. It was good of them to pick this up. They said, okay, we have our facility in Dublin, in Ireland, that, by the way, guys, they used to you know, do a lot of the production work and the control room for LEC that's happening in Berlin. After they fired all those people from LEC, now the control room is basically entirely run out of Dublin. So they have a bunch of people at their Striker facility, which was built and designed to be a hub of broadcasting. Riot built another one of these things, although I think it's a smaller one, in Seattle. Right? And these hubs are intended so that you can have remote production crews doing stuff from around the world, right? They also did the control room for Worlds this year in Europe, out of the Striker facility. And this was supposed to be the solution. Okay, it's kind of screwed up. Nobody's going back to China. Even though COVID, the pandemic, lockdowns have ended in China. Okay, you're just going to have to do it. Tencent doesn't want to fund this. We'll emergency fund this. And Oshin, the caster, who also did LPL, ended up being the producer of it this last year for Riot. He's Irish. He was working out of, as I understand, he's working out of Dublin, and he was helping produce this. They had to cut it to 5 days a week instead of the 7 days of broadcast, I think just for budgetary reasons, and also because if they were going to produce this thing, they needed to be able to, control the volume. Like 7 days was just too much, I think, to take in all at once, which again makes sense. If you're going from 0 LPL production on Riot's side to 100% 7 days a week, that's really hard, because then you probably need 2 different crews of people, because you're not going to have people work 7 days a week for months and months on end. So, it sucked, but at least, people were allowed to co-stream on the couple days that they didn't typically have broadcasts. And then we get to the end of this year. Okay, they finish it, and then Riot decides that they are just going to pull the plug on the LPL English broadcast entirely. And this obviously has huge ramifications, because it pretty clearly shows that, there's a lot of things that are implied by this move. First off, that Riot has ended its commitment to being there being an English language broadcast for all Tier 1 regions. And that's a pretty huge commitment to end if you are wanting as a person to follow all of the teams around the world. It's much harder to do.
And think about this, Monty. Remember, they always tell us even very recently, every single official Riot talk about like the future of League always infers they think it's going to be here decades from now.
Yep.
Bro, you've just killed the second most important league. And there's no LCS. Like, it just doesn't add up, does it, mate? Here's the thing. To me, it looks to me like what we've been talking about for the last year and a half, which is everything they're doing is moving to cost-saving measures where you have potential outsource everything and make someone else carry the cost. Like, you make someone else run it as a little shitty business, or someone else do it on their course. And eventually, at the end, you're going to have no costs. You just min-max in the esports side, right? So, because as you say, Monty, it's clear at this point in time that, like, they're putting fuck all effort into the league side, and it looks like they've pivoted to Valorant and the new games, right? Or the forthcoming games, right? Seems like it.
And also, Thorin, another thing that people may not put together with this is that Mark Z said that, get this, LTA South. So remember, we are supposed to believe that League of the Americas is one league with 2 conferences, right?
Sure.
So there's the North Conference, which is formerly LCS, and there's the South Conference, which is formerly CBLOL. But now these things interact. They are the same. That's what Riot's saying. It's the same branding. He has said that LTA South will not have an English broadcast either. So now half of
See me when it gets to that playoff point where they cross play, if I'm an LCS a Northern fan, I'm just going, who the fuck is this they're playing?
Yes.
Yep. That sounds like, you know what I said earlier, Monty, when I made that mad prediction on 4 Horsemen, everyone's going to think I'm wild about. When I said, when the Southern Conference team beats the Northern Conference team, people will lose their mind. Well, imagine if you hadn't even seen them play and you thought they were literally just wildcard shitters from Worlds Pro. Like, this is going to make that even worse. If they ever actually get the upset, it's going to look like you've completely ruined the whole region.
So they expect us to believe that this is all one league. So if I'm going to use my Riot's favorite sports analogy, this would be like American sports fans, Riot employees. If you had an AFC that was broadcast in English and an NFC that was broadcast only in Spanish and Portuguese, and you're like, well, they're meeting in the Super Bowl. Who the fuck knows what's happening in the other half of this league?
Well, even better, when the NFC team wins the Super Bowl, you go, what the fuck? Are they even good? Is the whole sport just shit? Yeah, that would actually ruin the whole thing, wouldn't it, mate? It's actually mental.
And not only that, but Mark Z also did the classic Riot, which is effectively to present a choice as inevitable, as if they don't have another solution. So what he did when trying to explain this, you'll love this, Thorin, was he said, well, what are we supposed to do? Just have Azael go to the studio and cast the games early in the morning and then do LCS later on? As if we couldn't get other casters, maybe up and coming casters. I don't know, because they can't do the LPL anymore. So maybe you should use English language up and coming casters on the LTA South, and you could do some kind of, let me get this straight, remote broadcast where those people were at least at home and broadcasting so that you would get English coverage over that region. Because look, from
also,
the
by the way, as
talent,
far as I know, Monty, isn't it the case that like South America, places like Brazil, have a time zone quite similar to Europe, don't they? I think you can. I think they have like almost the same time.
It's 2 hours ahead of East Coast America.
So
it's like halfway between. It's like halfway between.
So to me, even a remote broadcast will work from Europe again, probably from that same fucking Spriker facility if you wanted.
Yep, sure would, because it would be in the or probably early afternoon there, or late afternoon into the evening, right?
Yep.
But again, you know, and what this says, guys, is like, again, if Riot was serious about caster talent, right? Which, remember, LPL has been the primary pipeline of caster talent in the history of League of Legends. Well, okay, you get rid of that.
What people get as well, this will probably be a subtle point people all miss, Monty. One of the reasons is obvious. You're casting the best players in the world.
Yes.
So if you're awesome, we're really going to see it. Whereas the problem is, if you are casting like a random LLA game, I don't know how good the game is, so I don't know how good your shit is. So it's true. That's also why it's the ultimate breeding ground for talent, right? You sort of throw in potential people onto like amazing, and also that's a dream league to cast, Monty. All these action and team fights and crazy super import players is the dream.
There is no better league to get reps in than LPL for the following reasons in terms of caster development. More games. You know, LCS casters have been doing like three best of fives a day, 2 days a week for years, or best of ones rather, 2, 3. They do about, LCS casters do 5 best of ones a week on average, and they've been doing this for 10 years. In LPL, because they don't have a lot of casters, if you're doing your reps, you're probably doing 10 best of 3s a week. So you're doing exponentially more games. Your growth is better. Like you say, Thorin, the games are higher quality, which means that it will either force you to get knowledgeable about the game or it will expose your weaknesses very quickly, right? And so it actually allows you to do things like analysis, which is not possible sometimes in LEC or LCS formerly, right? Because the teams are so bad that even if you are a good analyst and you are saying the things that they should do, they literally won't do them and they make you look stupid even though you're the one providing the good information, right? And so it's very hard to do, it has always been immensely difficult to do real analysis, particularly in the LCS, because the teams are shit, okay? So that's another problem, but which it's solved by the LPL. You can know if somebody's good. And as you also allude to, Thorin, there's so many fights. There's so much action. As a play-by-play, you just have to go crazy. Like it's going to be, because of the pace of the games, you will be exposed as a bad play-by-play caster very quickly because there's almost no downtime, right? It's definitely the fastest paced of this league, of all the leagues. So if you want to know that somebody's good, LPL was the ultimate place for them. And even if they had replaced LTA South with LPL in terms of English caster development, it would have been something, but it would have lacked many of the qualities that made LPL talent good. And I think Riot, we have to assume, Thorin, because they're cutting the English broadcast in LPL and they're not even replacing it with LTA South, that what Riot is doing ultimately is they're saying we do not need to develop any more talent. Because you tell me, if you are an aspiring talent and you are not currently signed to a tier 1 broadcast, how do you get discovered? How do you get reps at this point in time? Because if you're not big enough to co-stream, which you're not if you're an upcoming talent and get meaningful numbers, you're not going to get co-streaming rights, so you can't show it off. And also, co-streaming is inherently a different skill, and it's a different creative product that you're making than a cast is. So unless you're Nymira and Initialize, his brother, who were doing some of those LPL matches on their off days when there was no other broadcast to provide a similar experience. But how do you crack into that? How do you get recognized? How do you get reps? Are you just casting VODs as if they're live? That's never been a good indication of somebody's abilities because they probably have already seen the game, you know? So they probably have already heard other people talk about it. It's incredibly difficult. So what this means is that Riot isn't interested in developing casters anymore. Now, what does that tell you about League of Legends? That they're probably slowly phasing out the casting product. And on a long enough timeline, they are either going to move entirely to a co-stream model, or, you know, they'll shutter LCK eventually, because why would they keep LCK around? We'll get into that. Why would they keep LCK English around? If they don't have to, it's just an additional cost. And if that happens, then they'll just shuffle around their talent into NA and EU, the people that they want to keep, presumably, and they'll just have a ton of people available on the bench in case there's spots that open up. And so co-streaming is basically what they're saying is the way of the future. Or Thorin, they will just get rid of this problem entirely by giving the English language broadcasts to ESL and the Saudi government, which is the other thing. They'll just make it somebody else's problem at the end of the day. People are saying, well, Riot would never, ever do that. I don't think Riot's going to give up control over Worlds or MSI, but I do think that the day-to-day operations of LEC and LTA could easily be handed over to ESL and Riot would just oversee them. So,
by the way, as someone who's a commentator, I have a question for you. It's actually a question I asked Anders because, by the way, in a forthcoming episode of a talk show, he brings up the same point, like maybe Counter-Strike will become a core streaming game, etc., because so many people are doing it when they don't attend events now. So here's the problem I had, and I asked this to him, because think about this, Monty. One of the reasons why, even if you, a random fan, like to watch a core stream, you should want a main English professional style broadcast with sports style casting to exist is because, bro, almost every single iconic player is accompanied by an iconic cast.
Of
it's
course.
not just nobody. If I even asked Monty to this day, it's the most famous clip probably ever in League of Legends. If I asked a random fan who doesn't have the clip in front of them, what does Faker actually do? What order of spells? They would never be able to tell you, Monty. But I tell you what, they remember what are the moves, Faker, like that. That's the iconic part. By the way, it's the same in every game. It's one of the reasons why casters aren't beloved. They become a part of like the history of the game. So I also feel like you're going to massively miss out if there are no iconic calls. If it's just like, I mean, I always do the ridiculous strawman version of it, but it is what Valorant is. Valorant is Tarek, who my joke is like you're just watching the game with your high roommate going, shit, that's crazy, man. Like, that cannot be an iconic call. Like, even though we all enjoy when they do the core stream little video where people react and go, oh my God, like, that's not a professional call, though. There's something about the way Anders or Doa or Sadikist or someone would have done it that gives it, funnily enough, the gravitas that makes it too super epic. It's not the call on its own. It's not the play on its own. It's the interaction of the two. The analogy I gave on the CS talk show, Monty, is it would be like making a Hollywood movie, but then going, who needs a soundtrack? Don't bother with the Hans Zimmer. It's like the Hans Zimmer soundtrack is what makes it epic. It's not Hans Zimmer on its own. It's not the film on its own. It's when the two collide and they're really awesome, like in a Christopher Nolan film, then it blows your fucking mind, doesn't it? So to me, I also think people don't realize what they're going to lose if we don't have a real broadcast doing this. Like, I'm even thinking of LPL clips now because I watch it in English. I'm thinking of all the iconic calls. Like, half those fucking, if people don't know, half of what made the Shy famous was people like fucking Dagda and Lyricals losing their minds watching him do the most crazy outplays ever that were never supposed to happen. It wasn't just even the play. So I feel like, because by the way, that is a thing about broadcast, even when you're an expert, we all sort of still need the cue, almost like the applaud now thing on the screen to tell us that it's actually super sick. It takes you a while for your brain to process how dope a move is. You sort of need the caster to tell you now is the appropriate time to lose your mind. This is mental. Like, I think people don't realize what we're gonna have such a fucking bereft esports history if we just now have 10 years of core streams. You know, like, it can't be, I'm sorry, it can't be Dom and Gilius going like, oh, he's fucking in. What are we doing? Like, that can't be the iconic call. I need like Dora or some professional to do it. Come on, Atlas.
It's also that if you don't have professionals to do it, there's a lot of other big negatives that come along. So for example, Riot loves holding these big stadium events. Whose voice is going out into that stadium? If you have bad people, the crowd's going to be way worse. I tell you that right now. Here's another angle for you. Sponsors. Do you think sponsors would like the iconic calls and the sound bites on the advertisements? Of course they do. That's what the boomers want. They want it to sound like sports. They don't want a streamer reaction compilation over a clip with everybody sitting in their little gamer chairs going, oh my God. That's not what anybody wants. It doesn't create a professional appearance. And here's the other thing that you may not appreciate. Casters actually have a different skill set. Now, you may love your favorite co-streamers, and I totally get that. But if you're a caster, the reason why people want to do casting, and I can tell you this as a caster, the reason why we love the art of casting is because it's about telling the stories of the game and the players. These are not replaceable people. You can't just have a new co-streamer walk in and know Faker's history. There's a value in the people who have been there the whole time, or the people who are willing to do the research and tell those stories, to set up the players properly and to correct the narratives and to set the table so the audience can have a feast. And the co-streamers are all watching this on their streams. They're reacting to the stories that are being told. Even if you never, ever, 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 ever watch the mainstream, you are still listening to the casters and those stories. And I tell you as well, those co-streamers are learning things about the history of the players and the teams from the casters that they're listening to, or at least the ones they're talking to. And if those people don't exist, poof, the history just disappears, guys. It just disappears. You cannot rely on a rotating series of co-streamers to tell the narrative of your game. If we didn't have casters, Faker's narrative that we all love right now would be 1 billion times worse. And that's just true.
To me, I think people don't realize how spoiled they are by people like Dom or Nymera, who are trying to actually do like core streams where they do give incorrect information and they do like follow the league and they try and be really fair. Bro, imagine two obvious aspects, right? Here's a very famous core streamer, Double Lift. Bro, he has literally repeatedly done core streams, Monty, where he says the dumbest possible take. Like, there was a famous one at MSI this year, Monty. When fucking BLG played T1 the first time at MSI, Double Lift, unironically, in game 1, was like, Knight just solo killed Faker. That's probably the best moment of his whole career. It's like, he's the reigning MVP of this tournament, you dunce. Like, that's the info a fan is going to get, Monty. They're not going to get some... when Nymera will do the opposite and be like, well, that's because on the Ari, he's playing with these runes that a lot of people aren't using, but on patch 13, you're not going to get that. You're just going to get Double Lift like, shit, I guess Ari's cracked. Like, you're just going to get nothing. It's going to be an head version.
And the thing about this, I'm not talking about Kadril's quality, but Kadril's by far the biggest co-streamer now, guys. And he was born in 1996. He was 13 years old when Faker won his first title. He doesn't know shit about like the early days of Faker, but there are people who are casters now who were there. Like, I rarely agree with the way that Riot does casting assignments, right? By not putting Korean casters on there. But objectively, Kobe's been there the whole fucking time.
Oh, sure.
Right? You know what I mean? Sure. Like, these
also, by the way, Kadril himself shows you, Monty, the difference between professional casting and core stream.
Yes, he can do both.
He was amazing on LEC. On the core stream, it's way more playing to the crowd, isn't it? Yeah, so it's a very different style. Content. Very different,
But he understands the difference between these two things. I think Kadril was the best color caster, but he doesn't do that same kind of work.
Yeah.
On his own stream. And it's gotten him great success. Like, I don't begrudge him for it. He's very entertaining in his own right, but you can see the difference there. And I really just think like in the long run, this is going to be pretty deeply felt. And Riot, I guess, just is very confident that the people that they have basically hostage, by the way, because they are holding the casters hostage with their monopoly, because every time they cut one of these broadcasts, it's just like, you could be next, casters. Stay in your lane. You won't be getting raises. You'll take whatever we tell you and you're going to like it. Enjoy your pay cut in more days. Like, that's what they do. That's what Riot does. And these people are scared shitless.
Beatings will continue until morale improves. You know the slogan at Riot.
Yeah. These casters are so scared shitless because many of them have spent many years building up nothing of value on their own. Yeah. They have no escape plan, and they didn't negotiate for higher wages when it was good. So they've been on just the kind of like indentured servitude treadmill forever. They haven't built up, I don't think, much financial reserves in order to take a risk or to do something else with their lives. So they're just going to ride it down. They're just going to be on the Titanic until the very fucking bitter end. And Riot knows that. So I mean, it's sad. I mean, it's sad to watch, right? Because I think a lot of these people are really skilled and deserve to be treated better. I obviously am very passionate about casting as an art form that I would like to see continue. Yeah. And I would like to see there actually be development pipelines for new casters, because the way it's structured right now, not only are you not... Tell me what the way to get new casters is, because now nobody can make a living as a developing caster. If you want somebody to focus full time, I didn't even mention this, Thorin, but over the last few years, they've been cutting down the ERL broadcast. So all of the European tier 2 leagues have less and less and less casting. They've been hacking away at that. There's no LTA South broadcast now for English. There's no LPL broadcast for English.
It shocks me, Monty. In my game CS, by default, we have English on almost everything because it's all remote. It's just online if it's a smaller league. You're right. It's actually bizarre that it wouldn't even be an option to go online and remote. That's bizarre, mate. That you just go for it. Has to be in a studio or there's nothing. Like, what?
Well, you can do remote stuff, Thorin, but I mean, the most pathetic aspect of this at all, and why I'm concerned about the LCK, people will be like, well, they would never cut the LCK. We'll see about that, guys. We'll see about that. If Kadril's now getting more views on many LCK English streams. So at what point in time do they just decide, well, the current casters, they can just go off and co-stream and it'll be the same thing. Like, good luck to them. They'll figure it'll all sort itself out in the wash, right? There's a real danger of that happening. And the reason why I say that, guys, is if they're cutting the LPL English broadcast, it says we don't care about future talent pipeline, which is what they were paying for. And it costs too much money to operate this thing as it is right now. So we're not going to do it. We're just not going to have LPL English coverage, which, by the way, when they get to international tournaments, is sure going to make those fucking clip packages they show you sound shit, because all of a sudden, all the clips they show you are going to have no English casting all over them, and it's going to be a real weird product to watch because you aren't going to hear voices in English describing the best plays that they are trying to show you of these players. Not only that, Thorin, but when there's nobody on LPL English broadcast, the other thing you guys have to remember is that obviously not all the other casters are watching LPL. So when an international event comes up, what do you think happens? The casters who go to the event, i.e. not the LPL casters, contact the LPL English casters and say, hey, I need some information on these players. What do you got? And they have conversations. And usually the casters are very gracious about preparing each other for this because it's understood we're kind of all in this together, right? Well, now there's going to be nobody to do that, right? Now there's going to be nobody to do that. Who the fuck are the LCS casters going to call up at this point in time? Dom's too busy. He's not going to have calls with them. He's doing 12 hours of co-streaming a fucking day. It's not his problem. You know what I mean? So all of the kind of community of casters that has been built up. So there's going to be, what I'm saying is there's going to be more wrong information at MSI, at Worlds about the LPL team. Casters going to be significantly less prepared to handle these teams because there's nobody that they can actually kind of like call with a lifeline to get information from. Because a lot of these casters are not going to make it in the co-streaming world. They're going to move on with their lives at this point in time, guys. Like there's no future for them. They've been denied a tier 1 opportunity in any other place. Their tier 1 opportunity has been taken away. There's no place they can go. They can't go to ERLs because those don't have enough paying slots anymore. And there's no replacement for LPL English, not even LTA South. So what do you do? What do you do at this point in time? It's like you got to just walk away. You basically, like, we're losing a bunch of really good casting talent. And there aren't slots on the other broadcast to pick these people up for the most part. So it just fucking sucks.
Think about this, Monty. They've now absolutely spit roasted the entire fucking League of Legends talent game because we've already pointed out in the past that most of the great casters don't keep doing the job. Eventually they hit a glass ceiling and say, fuck it, I'll go do a GM, a coach, some other role, producer. Now you're killing the talent pipeline at the other end. That means all you're left with, Monty, is some weird like middle generation who's going to continue on for a few more years. When they retire, by the way, you're right, you're fucked. You're just going to people who've casted like minor leagues and second divisions that no one's going to know, and you're just not going to have a lineage of great casters because the great ones currently retired and aren't replaced at that point. It would be, the analogy would be, it's like what Arnold from Gen G complained about in LCK. It's not the problem that they don't have great players now. They have Chovy and Faker and all these guys, but they don't have the next Chovy is what he's concerned about, or that guy's playing Valorant or some other game, you know. So the concern is you've got to have like a continuous generational moving on to the next people.
Yeah, I mean, Arnold is he's not saying they don't have Chovy Jr. He's mostly concerned that they don't have Chovy the third, right? Like the next generation of players, right? The kids who are like 10 or 12 now is what he's concerned about. But I mean, to go back to the LCK broadcast,
clear massive Faker fans right now. that was low hanging. That was right out there. You know, it's all good. Then again, Monty, in some ways, isn't that like the sign of maturity? You know, being a young man is believing Faker's the GOAT at all time because it's a great story and he was really excellent. Becoming an adult is knowing Chovy's actually better than Faker. You know, it's something about maturity.
The complex taste and appreciation for the winning in lane and side laning. But anyway. I think also that to tie it back to the LCK, people might think that I'm being dramatic, but here's why I think this could, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, guys, but I think it could eventually happen to the LCK is, what was the cost of LPL? Not very much, right? They were running a remote broadcast with casters, and then they had a production team in a facility that they already have built and staffed in Dublin, right? The cost can't have been that enormous to run LPL English. I will tell you right now, the cost to run LCK is probably significantly higher because they're in studio. They have more casters on a day. They have camera operators. They have other expenses that are running. And here's the craziest thing about LCK. Again, they're losing a fuck ton of money on this. Why are they losing a fuck ton of money on this? Well, they took away subscriptions that OGN has when it was making money. And then you might say, well, okay, they made it free. Well, what did they replace it with? Did they replace it with sponsors? No, they did not. I think the saddest thing about the LPL or LCK English broadcast has been that they have never had a sponsor on the global stream. And you might say,
Paul, think about the viewership on those fucking finals in spring that we've been having. Those like bonkers numbers. Like I'm talking like hundreds of thousands live, and they don't have a sponsor. That is so incompetent. It's insane, bro.
And I'll get you into why it's even more incompetent, Thorin. So you might say, well, you know, maybe it's hard to get Korean sponsors onto the LCK because it's like a Korean stream in English and it's going out to a European and American, like English speaking audience. Now that's a lot of geographic region to cover. Sure would be crazy if a Korean company wanted to do that. LCS and LEC both have Kia sponsorships to North American and European audiences. It's a Korean car company that is trying to use League of Legends to reach a European and American English-speaking audience, and they can't get a fucking Kia advertisement on LCK. That blows my mind. It blows my mind that that is not possible. In fact, they had Kia on LEC, and then they sold it on LCS last year, and they never even sold it to LCK English. So when we talk about LCK, it's not that it's making money. That fucking English stream loses a ton of money every year, and they have such low-hanging fruit. Red Bull is another one. Literally, the same product on LCS, on Worlds, on LEC, going to the exact same audience, the exact same people that Red Bull wants to pay for. How is it possible that they have never, ever sold a sponsor on the English-speaking LCK broadcast, including sponsors that they already have that are targeting that same audience on their other leagues? It is astounding, the incompetence.
You know what always pisses me off as well, Monty, since we have done this show for 10 years, plus 10 years at this point in time, by the way, is remember the original ideology and principle expressed by Riot for like 4 to 5 years, which went like this. Well, we don't ever need to make money because we just run esports at a loss because we just love the scene that much and we want to provide an excellent competitive circuit for our game. And they made, so what they did essentially, Monty, was run things in an incredibly incompetent, inefficient, stupid way and not actually like pad them with like things that save money and give you actually like margins, etc. And then later scramble really quickly when they need to make money. When the first thing they try doesn't work, they go, I guess you just can't make money, and shut it down. That's what they do in every area, right? It's so gross. Because like if you could go back in time, nothing has aged worse than that take of like, we don't need to make money. We just spent money on it. Because like the day that Tencent took over, like that ideology changed immediately. They were like, actually, we only care about making money, you fucking imbecile. Like it was like a totally the opposite thing, but so jarring to me because I remember those years of gaslighting, Monty, and the worst part of it, you remember, was we were supposed to bow and crawl and kiss Riot's feet and thank them for being so gracious to give us esports, give us this esports now. And then now, as you say, I'm supposed to believe this is the biggest esports game in the world. The fucking LPL almost won Worlds. They were like this far from winning it, but I can't now watch it in the English language on a real broadcast. Like, what is this? This is, like I said, bro, any shitty little online cop in Counter-Strike, I can watch in English. I can't watch LPL on an official broadcast. Because remember, people are going to go, no, but now you can watch the core stream. Only because the core stream exists, right? It doesn't care about that. By the way, what happens if the core stream decides, look, it won't, but what if they just decided to quit too? We'd just have nothing. I would have to actually watch for real and just listen in Chinese. I mean, the joke there would be, this is a fucking deep cut. At least then everyone would know how Uzi I and fucking, you know, those people are called, but whatever. That's not really worth it, is it? That's something of a petty win on that one, Monty.
But yeah, I mean, it's a good point. What happens if Dom and Caedrel retire? Is there going to be somebody as big who can replace them in the English language? Because where did Caedrel come from? Oh, right, the official broadcast. You know, and Dom came from years and years of being a professional player and streamer. Like, is there another streamer that's going to be that passionate about esports that's suddenly going to appear and do Chinese fucking League of Legends in the middle of the night? Using Dom's out, certainly won't be an American person because nobody else is crazy enough to wake up at 3 a.m. and do this for 8 months straight. I mean, people don't appreciate how difficult that is. So maybe it'll be somebody in Europe or someone like that. But where does the talent pipeline come from? Because you have to have somebody like Caedrel who went from professional playing to casting, where he learned how to do broadcasts and then into streaming and then into co-streaming, right? There is a progression to these skills. You don't just arrive with all of this built up, all these skills built up already.
Also, I'll just put this out there. This might sound like purely self-indulgent, but there's a point to this. Maybe in the modern day, we're not as much the tastemakers of League of Legends entirely. But back in the day, this show you are watching right now was massively influential in promoting people who became major casters on the LCS and LEC back when they weren't. And what was the reason, Monty? We found these people to pick them up. They were already casting the best leagues in the best regions. And we just went, wow, you're interesting. Come on a show. Well, spoiler, we won't have the person to pick to come on the show, so then they will also get a bigger profile. Because none of this works. We had a whole ecosystem, and like any ecosystem, if you take one little part out, it will have a knock-on effect on parts that don't seem directly related.
Yeah. And look, I understand, because obviously Tencent is vacuuming up all the sponsorship money for LPL, and they're just saying, Riot HQ, you pay for this shit if you want it. Like, it's a bad situation. And I'm not saying it will happen to LCK, but it does make me concerned, because if it is just a budget cut, even if you were to say something like for LCK, what is stopping them from doing a remote broadcast again from Dublin, where people just call in from their fucking houses and you remove them and you have fewer casters? You get rid of the analyst desk that they've built up, or the space that they've built up on the LCK broadcast. Therefore, you save a lot of money by doing this stuff. I think it could be, definitely a possibility for LCK in the future. And you just can tell, like, Riot saying, well, we have these broadcasts, but we never bothered to actually get them sponsored or monetized in any way. We never did proper sales on them, and now they're just losing money. What a fucking surprise, right? What a fucking surprise. And not only that, but this LPL broadcast has been tortured throughout the years. It literally would have been better if Riot had never actually taken over this broadcast, and it could have just become a community-run thing over many years. They never would have had any cost. Honestly, I would trust a decade-long community project to get more sponsors and be a proper business compared to Riot. And I don't think they would have to paywall it. I think just over time you would develop relationships, and the costs are pretty low for remote broadcasts with a few people who know what they're doing. You can absolutely run an LPL English broadcast for, like, I don't know, $300,000 or $400,000 a year, probably. Not as fancy as it is now, but something. You could get something done for sure.
By the way, since people did say this, Monty, I don't know if you got this. There are those people who always forget the key detail that I go to pains to mention. We're not funded. The company isn't funded. It's a startup. You know, our Riot, we joke there. No, we really are a little startup. It's just like me, Monty, and a few other people. And we don't always get paid. And we take like just the odd bit of money out of some of the revenue we make from getting overwhelming amounts of sponsors. But I saw people saying that as well, Monty, like, maybe you guys could do it. What would the upside be? Like, here's what's a joke. We actually probably could sell sponsors, Monty, and grind out a tiny profit, but the tiny profit wouldn't be worth it for us. Like, remember, we aren't Riot. We don't have an extra reason to have a broadcast. Like, we wouldn't make loads of money, and the amount of effort it would take, Monty, would be fucking ridiculous. Like, I don't want to have to do all shit so UP can play a game, and at the end, what would I have done? Just helped Mark Merrill and fucking Riot. What's the upside to me? Why do I want that? That's nonsense, mate. Why do I have to save them? I'm not doing that. You fucking save yourself.
Thorin, you're also not even mentioning that we would actually be creating a competitor to some of the talent at LFN.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's like a conflict of interest there that we would be entering into, which I think would be a bummer, right? But you're saying, like, and also if we did take something like this over,
LCK to exist, because right now we can't pay Decon what we need to pay him, so I need LCK to pay him. So keep doing that, please.
Exactly. But I mean, if you guys think about it, like, even if we created something like this, we would then have to play nice by Riot. We couldn't say a bunch of the stuff on the shows, otherwise they would revoke our broadcasting rights, even though obviously
Monty, you'd come to them with like an actual fucking deal and they'd go, we don't approve that sponsor for like no reason or whatever. Like, you just know they'd fuck you as well. It'd be such a nightmare, wouldn't it?
Well, but it's also that even though clearly we wouldn't do anything against Riot on the broadcast, I mean, this is the big misnomer that Riot had about me, where it's like, all of a sudden, can't work with Monty. Who knows what Monty would say? Did I ever say anything unprofessional on the thousands of hours of live broadcasts? No, I saved that for my own content. I saved my opinions for my own content. I know the difference. But anything we said on our own shows would then be wielded against us. They could pull it from us, and all of the work that we had done to build something like that up, they could just pull it away at the drop of a hat for any of the 1,000 petty reasons they've ever done anything in their decade plus of being a garbage esports company. So no, it's just not worth it. Like, we'd basically be building a castle, a castle on sand. And whenever Riot decides just to shake it a little bit, it all comes falling down. All that work goes away. And for what? So we can have a broadcast that we run? Like, who gives a shit, man? Like, it's not our business. It's not our business model. And we don't get anything from it besides more cost and possibly some sponsors, right? So
that's one thing, by the way, that I'm going to actually use now as a quick reason to slam fans, because why not? Why break the habit of a lifetime? That's the idea that that's how your brain works. Like, you're in theory the neutral or good fan. You actually like us and you want like us to succeed. But you are so entitled that it never occurs to you, why isn't there a method I could pay to fund the... You think we should just do it. And even worse, you imagine, because you refuse to listen about the economy of esports, you imagine we'd be rich if we ran this broadcast. Like, again, like I said, what is the incentive to me? I'm not even a fucking League of Legends guy, really. Like, for fuck's sake. Again, I'm not sacrificing that much of my life for Ultimate Prime or whatever to play. Like, I don't care. I just don't care, mate. I don't give a fuck. And again, also spoiler, this might sound crazy, even though I haven't really done it much in my life. If possible, I'd rather use my efforts to not help Riot Games than help Riot Games. But I know it's crazy. I know it's fucking really out there. Because I know everyone else expects us to have battered wife syndrome, where we're supposed to just take it from Riot a million times, still turn around and go, well, no need to be rude. You're cool,
that's the
Riot.
casters. The joke is that's the casters who continue to work for them.
It's just garbage, isn't it? It's just garbage, bro. And by the way, spoiler, how did that work out, Monty? You know, the whole thing people said about me and you is, well, obviously, look what happened to them. They were rude to Riot. What happened to all the people who weren't rude to Riot? Can I get a list? You know what? I'll make it quicker, Monty. Can I just get a list of people Riot hasn't fucked? You know what? Don't do the one they have fucked. That will last forever, mate. It's almost everyone. Can I just have a list of the people they have? Oh, sorry, wait, my mistake, Monty. Yet. So even though on that list it'd have Corby, yet. And even then, I don't know behind the scenes what his situation is. Maybe his fucking contract's not even that good. Bro, they fuck everyone. Everyone who does keep their head down. He's a company man, toes the line, never ever by the way, they even fuck the people who, as they're explaining, like, I'm being fucked by Riot, but please don't get mad at Riot. This had to happen. They even still fuck them people. Like, they actually are just the most outrageous tyrants, bro. Like, to me, Riot is the opposite to what these people think. They think that if you antagonize Riot, they fuck you. I think it's the opposite, Monty. I think it's only if you antagonize them, they respect you. And if you don't antagonize them, they go, I can just fucking do whatever I want to this scrub. And they just fucking ring you out and just use you up and chuck you away, mate. It's like, again, I would just say, what incentive structure have they made to be in this community? Like, as far as I can tell, everyone got fucked in the end.
Yeah. Ask Dash how it's going, man. What did Dash ever do? What did Dash ever do wrong? You know? Just people thought
if they just joined the party, had fun, danced to the tunes, in the end they wouldn't get fucked. But enough about certain parties by a guy whose name began with D. I actually pussied out of that one. I should have said Diddy parties, whatever. I'm going to get capped by the deep states. Whatever. It was a better joke if I had just said, but enough about Diddy parties. Whatever. We'll edit that one. It's all good. Why did I like pussy out the last second? I know I've never done that before.
You don't actually have
I suddenly discovered like the trigger safety. Oh, put this on. What the fuck am I doing? All of a sudden out of nowhere.
Yeah, but look, like I said, you may not care. You may not have watched the LPL English broadcast, but there's still so many reasons to care about why they did this, including things that you actually do watch now and you might care about in the future. If you care about how LPL teams are presented at international events when they show up, these are all really important things. If you care about other broadcasts and maintaining their quality, because I guarantee you guys, and when LPL receives a 0 difference in viewership this coming year, which I assume it will, like, I don't think there's going to be a big difference in viewership. People want to watch the LPL are just going to watch the co-streams. I think they're totally right about that. But that wasn't the only function of the LPL. Oh, no. But when Riot sees that, they're going to say to themselves, this really didn't have an effect, and they're going to come for your shit next. So if you care, I would make a big deal out of this one before they start, carving budget out of LCK, before they start stripping away even more budget from LEC and LTA, the new LTA. It's just going to happen, guys. This is the wave of the future. Riot cares about the international events. All they need are enough casters to staff the international events, and they don't give a shit about the quality of domestic competition anymore.
By the way, I also think it's going to ruin the discourse, Monty, because I've already seen from like those regional broadcasts how it makes the topic so much more radicalized, bro. Like suddenly everyone is a hero or a villain on this in this particular game. Someone carried it or they were shit and they hinted like, bro, they don't do that on the professional broadcaster. They maintain a professional veneer where you can criticize, but you don't go over the top, etc. Because that's not appropriate for like the main broadcast. Sure. If everyone only consumes games through the lens of core streamers, bro, the actual hate trains on bad players are going to be crazy, mate. It is going to be nuts. Because the average casual fan's just going to be absorbing all that 24/7. It's going to be wild, mate. That's the guy I almost need to be like treated with kid gloves and told like, no, he's all right. You know, he's a rookie or whatever. Like they're just going to go wild on people. It's going to be really bad. Yeah, or whatever. That's just LEC in it. So all good.
So yeah, I mean, look, I'm bummed out, man. I'm bummed out. I'm bummed out for the people who are trying desperately to make a living in League of Legends, who were told for years that, hey, you've got this spot on the LPL at least, and maybe if we need you someday, we'll pay you a little bit more, and you could be in a studio. It just doesn't exist now. And it fucking sucks that these people spent years of their lives working on this broadcast, and it just evaporates tomorrow. And all of the knowledge that they built up, these people are not replaceable, guys. They're not replaceable. We can't just bring back the casters who have spent 5 years on this with all of that knowledge. Just going to go away because they're going to have to go do something else, and it's going to fucking suck. So I'm bummed out, man.
Well, here's the thing though, Monty. When it comes to the topic, though, of trying to save money, but also get sponsors, we're going to do both at once in a positive way, unlike Riot Games, because obviously, as you can see from this t-shirt I'm wearing, this show is sponsored by Into the Air, which we obviously mentioned many, many times before. They're an excellent company. By the way, shout out to lots of you that have bought the t-shirts. I hope you enjoy them. I find the quality of the actual materials very good. It's very nice actually after you wash it again. It doesn't lose the color and all that jazz. Like this hasn't suddenly become grey, even though it's like black when I originally bought it. Actually, the designs are all nice. Like I chose, like I always choose like pastoral, like simple, like scenic ones. They have loads of designs. So I'm actually amazed by how many designs there are on the site. Like every time Monty tells me like ask for more shirts, there's a bazillion things on this website, and they constantly, as like old fashioned, they update the collections and bring in the new ones. Also, you don't have to get printed t-shirts or other apparel. You can get like basic tees as usual. They always have. This is one thing that's cool. Our link that is on your screen, where it's www.intotheam/LFN, right? Our link always gets you 10% off, right? But, and here's the key thing, all savings on their site basically stack. So first of all, you can get the 10% and you can use like the bundles. So you can get 3 graphic tees for $61.95. You can get 3 basic tees like the ones Monty likes for $52.95. But then you can also get the 10% off that as well. And because they're having a Black Friday/Cyber Monday sale, up to 60% off certain things on their site, and that lasts until the 8th of December. So you can get people gifts for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, obviously for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So now is also the perfect time. By the way, there's another thing. Bearing in mind, a lot of people do actually buy very cheap apparel that's just not good quality. I also think actually when you're an adult, someone buying you like a nice t-shirt or a hoodie or something, that's actually a pretty cool piece of gift. Like something you would think, oh, I should have bought that for myself. It's a quality of life upgrade. So shout out to everyone who supports us and Into the Aim, our sponsor here, by using intotheam.com/LFN and getting not only 10% off, but potentially up to 60% off things site-wide, and those bundles are available. So shout out.
This is their biggest sale of the year, guys. So up to 60% off everything site-wide. Now's the time to go. They have fleeces. They have button-up flannels. They have bomber jackets. They have chinos. They've got everything. It's like complete men's apparel. So whatever you want, it's there. It's great quality. And we know a lot of you guys have liked them, so thank you for your support. All right, shall we talk about some roster rumors? You want to talk with the spicy LCK stuff?
Okay, first things first, Monty. The main first topic, we hinted at it before, because it just has to be narratively, is if you're in the region containing the back-to-back world champions, topic 1 should be, is that lineup staying together? That's the first thing we have to resolve before we can worry about anything about Chovy and Ruler or not. We have to ask, are they actually re-signing all of T1? Now, the interesting detail, Monty, I want to ask you initially is this. Heading into Worlds, when all they had won this year was EWC, it actually looked, and the implication was, they almost certainly wouldn't be keeping this roster together. As far as I can tell, it's only winning Worlds that has actually made them sort of reconsider. But by the way, understandably, that's actually a famous concept in sports that people don't know. even if you say it's my last year, if you win the championship, people do that chant, one more year. And sometimes you do, you run it back and see if you lose or if you could have made a dynasty. Like, by the way, here's an obvious reason why you'd keep this lineup together. It's ever done 3 in a row. You've got to go for it if you have a chance to do like amazing history like that. So the question I have to you is this: 1, do you think it is just winning worlds that's making this suddenly the focus? And 2, do you think it happens? Do you think they keep all 5? It's inferred at the moment they're going to keep the majority, but will they keep all 5, do you think?
Well, they've signed 4 of them. So they've signed everybody. Faker was already signed,
Faker was
right?
he had his contract till the end of next year, I think, right?
Yeah, Faker's already signed, just to be clear. And they have signed everybody else as of the recording of this, except for Zeus in the top lane. And I think, to your first question about running it back, I agree with you. I think you have to run it back to try for the 3-peat. I think you have to run it back purely for sponsorship reasons.
It would be silly not to, yeah.
Because this team is so popular right now, and they have so many idiots following them, that they'll just lap it up. So I think for business reasons, I still have not heard the answer to the question, does EWC or Asia Games count as one of those international tournaments that then gives them T1 a deduction against the salary cap regulations? Like, that is a key component that we still haven't heard from yet, that I think, frankly, the league should make public and clear which players and how much each individual player counts against the possible salary cap, just so we know. And so it's clear, because as far as I know, even other people in LCK don't know that. So it's completely opaque. And LCK needs to make that transparent both inside the LCK and publicly as fast as they possibly can. So if they're, it will be easier for them to sign Zeus if EWC or Asia Games count either one of them, because that would put him with the 2 worlds to the 3, which then gives them a percentage reduction of his salary against the cap, right? Not that he gets paid less, but basically the 4 billion won cap that then, after you surpass that, is the luxury tax, like only a percentage of his salary, like I believe 70% counts, against that cap. So it's very helpful, right? Because you could pay him more, which is good.
By the way, you always have to, you do a good job doing it, but you always have to mention that context that it's not a hard cap. You are allowed to exceed it, because people keep doing that thing, Monty, where they act like, oh, you've only got this much, and you can't, if you pay over, you can't. You can. It's like being like the fucking Lakers or something like that. You just pay the extra money if you want the super team. You just do it. But the point is, you are right. You're not going to be able to do a super team every year because it's just going to cost you so much more. But the point is, if you really believe it's worth it, like you have the T1 lineup, but because obviously the angle here, Monty, that is a bit sinister that we didn't really talk about before is this. You know what we didn't discuss when we mentioned these new salary cap rules is, Monty, if I have to pay luxury tax, but I am T1 and it's all about ZOFGK, then maybe I can get a big enough sponsorship that it offsets the fucking luxury tax. Sure. In which case, the rich get richer. I will absolutely run back my super team. Even though not super team, you know what I mean? Like, and that's so people thinking like it means you can't have super teams. You can. It's just the question is, does the team believe in it? You have to really commit to do a super team now. Because it looks like people are still trying to make them, mate. Like, if you think of what the contracts of, like, Chovy and Ruler presumably will be and what Fakers is, these have to be... Some of these are almost certainly going to run into the luxury tax. There's no way, like, Zeus and fucking Gumayushi are coming back for half their wages, surely. Surely they're coming back for a raise. Or something equally as much.
Who knows? They might just want to stick with the team, but I think that's the thing, that it's interesting that Zeus hasn't signed yet, and there are rumors that HLE is trying very, very hard to get Zeus, which would be enormous, right? And I think that HLE almost certainly can pay more than T1 can, because I don't think they'll hit the cap as quickly. But also, it's been said that some of these teams want to actually, like, HLE might want to go into the luxury tax apron in order to sign Zeus. Like, HLE has dumped, they had the second most expensive roster behind T1 last year. They clearly very much care about international success. And keeping the Delight, Viper, Zeka, Peanut roster and adding Zeus to the top lane makes this team an instant world contender. Yeah. They are the reigning LCK champion with fucking Thorin. Right, and some people be like, "Well, Thorin."
I think you could actually argue, even with some of the other rosters proposed, if they actually do just sign the original 4 plus Zeus, I think you can argue that's the best roster starting out. That is the best roster in league,
of course,
because there's no weak player there. Remember, people are going to forget Zika was fucking good in Summer Boys. He was even good at Worlds. Like, that would be a very good lineup, mate. That would be amazing.
Right. And the other thing about Zeka is like he just doesn't have to be as good on that team if you have Zeus and Viper in your side lanes,
Absolutely.
plus with, you know, Peanut's incredible pathing and his pressure in the early game. Like
I'll even give you an angle. Here's an obvious angle, Monty. He'd in theory be better because now we'd have Zeus for all those fucking flexes. Like, imagine now, by the way, when you see a Yawn come in, who's playing it? That's actually a real question for the other team now. Yeah. That wasn't a question when Faker was there. You knew either Faker would be playing like an okay Yawn or Zeus would be playing some nightmare Yawn top lane. Like that would, I think also that the Zeus's addition is also mad underrated because I always think he's like a draft sponge, mate. He's actually incredible, the extra things he can add. He can do a counter pick and be the winner. He can pick the bad lane. He can pick for the draft. He can pick for your mid laner. Yep. He's a mad versatile player. Yeah, I think he's a very underrated. That's why it's kind of cool. He's like the main piece that's like potentially going to determine who potentially gets like a dynasty or something.
Yeah, look, it would
and
be...
who the fuck would T1 get, bro? That's the obvious question, right? Because I tell you what, if Thorin's coming the other way, you know what? If Thorin comes the other way, I'll just tweet out immediately, like, if Faker's actually the GOAT, I guess he'd just win this year or something. Just fuck with all of y'all because, yeah, I'd like to, you know what? If that's the sad thing. I'd love to have just taken Zeus and Thorin and swapped them and taken Kerrier and Lehens and swapped them and then just have Faker win with those guys. Just have Faker win with Thorin and Lehens. Go for it, mate. Go on. Tell you what, it's a bit too easy for you, GOAT. You need a more of a challenge. So let's really challenge you. Get Thorin. There you go. Take Thorin to Worlds and win Worlds with him, you fuck. The way, because we're not going to go into this one very much, can I just point out that I like the rosters that just make me laugh when I see them, Monty? Like this one, even though it's just proposed, is fucking mental. Have you seen the Nongshim one? Guys, the Nongshim proposed roster is King and Pure Chic, Fisher, who sadly most of you won't even know entered the shit out of the LPL when he's on EDG, Jiwoo and Lehens. That is like, Monty, that is not Nightmare Blunt rotation. That is Nightmare Int rotation. That team sounds fucking mental. To have King and Pure Chic, Fisher and Lehens at the same time just sounds so absurd. I can't even comprehend. I want to see that team play though. It's such a nightmare.
Is it better than Nongshim's team last year? Yes.
Probably.
Is it a weird like topside DRX reunion of King and Pure Chic? Why couldn't they find anybody better than Fisher? I mean, if Yugal's going to DRX, like you would have rather him bid on Nongshim. And to be fair, Thorin, Jiwoo is actually really good.
He's not bad, actually. He's not bad.
So
yeah, he's good.
The Jiwoo Lehens lane is actually kind of hype, especially for a mid-table team. But Fisher is obviously...
The top side is a nightmare, mate. The top side is a nightmare. It's actually mental, isn't it? I know. I love it. It's so shit.
It's probably like a sixth place team, though. I mean... I don't know what the question is.
The thing is, Monty, you can just go the other way if you're evil. I could just use some like evil media spin for you. So you ready, Monty? World champion Kingen, world champion Pure Chic, and Lehens, LCK champion,
MSI,
MVP of the league.
MVP.
MSI and LCK MVP, first team, all like that sounds amazing, Monty. That's a fucking fire roster. What are you talking about? It's garbage. It's trash. It's just a bot lane getting it over and over again. That's all it is.
World's MVP Kingen.
And remember,
MSI
I'm just going to put this out there.
Lehens,
even though they are better actually playing through the fucking bot lane nowadays in Korea, it's not like the old days where it was just all top laners. At the same time, you have to have a good mid laner in LCK, Monty. You can't just, that's the one position you can't get away with like a shitter in. Like, that's the problem. This team's just hard capped. But it is funny, though. That roster just made me laugh. It's like anti-GM, and I love it. I love how shit it is. It's so bad.
Fisher was like not completely terrible in LCK when he came back.
LCK, it's just in LPL he was really bad, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not good. This team isn't going to suddenly be a deep playoff threat, right? Which is why it's like, why are we paying these guys so much money? Because here's the thing: if Lehens is leaving Gen G, it's for money reasons, which means Nongshim is giving him the fucking bag, guys. They're giving him the fucking bag. And Gen G, with their rumored roster, probably couldn't give Lehens the bag, because that's why they've been allegedly, like, Duro is going to be on this roster from FearX. And we'll talk about Duro in a second, but it appears as though Gen G will be keeping 3 of their players, Keen, Canyon, and Chovy. And then it also appears that they're getting Ruler back, which is a huge, huge move. And then Duro from FearX, who's a support who's been playing in amateur for quite a long time. He was part of, so FearX used to be Live Sandbox. He was in like the Live Sandbox like Challengers team for a long time. He was in Hanwha Life Challengers. And then he was brought up, he was basically promoted in summer of this year to the main FearX roster. And to his credit, he was actually pretty good. And I understand that if they needed a budget player, like him or Pleta were probably the two players that you would start to look at from lesser LCK teams that you think might be able to rise to the occasion, as it were. But it's clearly going to be a downgrade on Lehens, no matter how you look at it.
It is. That's the downside. Is before, in theory, on paper, you had all good players. Here's the thing, though, Monty. This will just show you, can super teams work? Because if they really sign Keane back again, and they've gotten Ruler, like, I'm not even joking, they might actually potentially, guys, be able to have the 4 best players in 4 positions. Like, that is real. That could actually happen. And even worse, if you're the other teams, those positions can all work without hard clashes. Like, Keane has already shown he will be a versatile player. Like, bro, that could be a fucking insane lineup if that really happens. If Ruler goes there, that is the balance of power potentially shifted. Like, the LCK is going to be fucking fire this year, mate.
And for those of you who want a Ruler update, if you weren't following him in LPL, because obviously he wasn't at Worlds this year, so you may not have, he wasn't at MSI, so you may not have actually kept up with how Ruler was doing on JDG. And he wasn't the best ADC in the world, you know, or in LPL even this past year. There were a lot of players who I think people would have thought were better than Ruler. But also there were very weird things happening on JDG, such as the whole Sheer Flandre mystery that was going on. So I think there was something very strange going on internally at JDG, and they certainly didn't have the super team built around him. So it's possible that he was just less motivated to play this year.
It's still good. And he just wasn't like last year. People were saying he was the best player in the world, weren't they? So like it was obviously a difference,
right? And I also think it's hilarious, some of the comments that I've seen, Thorin, such as people saying, oh my God, Pays was better than Ruler this past year.
Oh, no way.
I mean, possibly, but let's just say you believe that. Let's just say you believe Pays had a better performance than Ruler.
I thought it meant overall, fair enough.
No,
I still think Pays was fairly underwhelming this year, though.
Last year, great. In 2024, Pays was great in the regular season. The problem is he choked away a bunch of very important games.
Terrible, yeah.
So like when the pressure really got on, he didn't display the same level of performance. But I think even if you believe that Pays had a better season than Ruler, which I think is definitely arguable, gun to your head, do you sit there and say, I would rather have Pays than Ruler on my team? Like, Gen G fans, really? Like, push comes to shove, you're like, you must choose one ADC to play for your life. Nobody's fucking picking Pays, dude. Nobody is picking Pays. Even if you think Pays was better in 2024, you still aren't fucking picking Pays. You pick Ruler 10 times out of 10 because of the length of his career. The ceiling that he's displayed has been magnificent. So yeah, I think you know it's pretty clear who you would be picking there, and it's pretty clear why Gen G would take Ruler back. So I mean, it's interesting. I've also seen some wild takes, Thorin, about people saying, well, I guess Gen G does have money because they're spending all this money. No, you dumb motherfuckers. How many times did Gen G have to say, players are taking a discount to play here? They're not being reckless or irresponsible. You know who's doing that? That would be Hanwha Life. Hanwha Life is doing that. And you know why Hanwha Life is doing that? Because they are a chaebol in Korea. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, and this is a marketing effort for them. Hanwha is an enormous conglomerate. Okay, Gen G is a privately owned enterprise by investors. It's a venture capital project. Okay, they don't have the same money that a T1 who's backed by SK Telecom and Comcast has. They don't have the same amount of money that Hanwha has. The reason why they have good teams is that players are not taking the bigger contracts because they want to play there. Okay, I would be surprised if Gen G went into the luxury tax. But that's just been kind of the deal with them. And I would not, you know, take that. I would definitely just take that with a grain of salt, the way that you guys perceive Gen G. And I'm sure they had the third highest salaries and budget in LCK last year. So it's not like they're a slouch, because they have sponsors from their success. But at the same time, like, I don't think they're ever going to be the #1 budget team in the league. And I don't think they're going to be close to that either.
Even so, though, that's why you know they're doing an amazing job, either, whether it's that people want to play with Chovy or what. But, like, mate, if the Doro guy ends up actually being competent enough to not gate the team, this could be the best lineup to ever play League of Legends. It looks like fucking amazing on paper. So, bearing in mind, Gen G could have had a golden road last year. Like, they're actually killing it that if they're managing to get these players without having to play them the insane amounts that the LPL and LCK teams do. Like, they've killed it. Great job.
Yeah, and maybe if LPL wasn't decreasing its salary cap and LPL wasn't like pulling back in terms of spend, maybe they wouldn't have been able to do this. But in a year where perhaps not all those crazy China contracts aren't available, this may have been, okay, I'll take a discount, but not that much of one to stay on Gen G because I get to stay in Korea and I get to stay in this team that I like and with other players that I like, right? And I get to take another stab at Worlds. Because ultimately, winning the World Championship and getting the payday from the fucking World skins is probably more money than you would ever get in your contract anyway.
All right.
I mean, the cut that the players get off of that is life-changing money. That's why it's T1 and the teams get too, like T1's getting mega cuts off of that, which probably, when they win Worlds and get another skin, it probably enables them to maybe pay some of that luxury tax as well. Like it's pretty significant. So, Gen G might be saying, we take a discount now, but we're going to roll the dice on finally winning that World Championship. And maybe it comes to fruition.
Since you mentioned the contrast, ruler pays. You know what? Here's what I love, Monty. Oh, I fucking love it. It's glorious. Because we're going to get a chance to see. Everyone out there, Wolf, you said Piers was the MVP. We're going to get a chance to see if he's an MVP, mate. Because I'll tell you what, if he isn't, this fucking KT roster team's going nowhere, bro. Like, look at that fucking squad. Like, there's no Chovy King to carry you here, mate. There's no best jungler in the world. Look, BDD's pretty good, but you're going to have to fucking do work, Piers, if you want to win the LCK now, bro. This is going to be uphill sledding, as they say.
Not only that, but he's going to be in lane with Wei. Because remember, Lehens is a very vocal player. I think Lehens was probably responsible for a lot of Paze's development, particularly in the laning phase. And now he's going to be the one with the rookie player in Wei. And Wei is a hyped up prospect, but he's still going to be a rookie coming into the league. BDD and Cuz, now they're coming back. The KT roster from 2023 that did very well as they've been playing together since like the Longju days. So they have a lot of built-in synergy. So you love to see that. And Cuz absolutely deserved to be on a better team last year. He was by far the best part of Guangdong. And then you have Perfect and possibly Thorin on that roster. But Perfect is a player that is, he was left out to dry a lot by his teammates. And I think this is
also playing with fucking Pure Shake.
Yes.
You know what? The other thing that we did once on Snake and Banter, where Launders came on and he said that if you were on NIP in CS, because they so badly mismanaged their roster for like 3 years, Monty, he said, like, he basically is declaring that no one's time on NIP counts against their career. Like, you get forgiven. It's an amnesty on all your time. Similarly, if you were in a team with Pure Shik, I'm giving you an amnesty. You know what? It's only then when like, I know King and shit now because I saw him on other teams, but when he was with Pure Shik, I could never be sure, which was it, chicken or egg. But now I know it's all good. It's all good. It's also why low-key Summit is based. He was just fine even though he played Pure Shik.
We call it the Pure Shik amnesty.
Yes, exactly. Because funnily enough, a lot of people would like to forget their time playing with Pure Shik, but enough about that.
You don't have to be sentenced to career death if you have the Pure Shik amnesty. That's great. But Perfect is a player who I think developed really well. In my mind, he was actually Rookie of the Year this year in 2024. The only reason it was he wasn't eligible was because he played one meaningless LCK game at the last day of summer 2023 because it didn't matter if KT won or lost that game, so they ran out their challenger squad. But Perfect, I think, had a better season. Lucid was good too, but I think Perfect had a better season overall. And he was often just like dealt the shittiest hand possible. Like he would get no help. He would get dove. Then the enemy team would repeatedly dive him. His own team would do nothing. And he was forced to basically like play with zero resources. He got Dyrist, except unlike Dyrist, he was actually good at playing with zero resources. So, I mean, I think in a different dynamic, perhaps Perfect will do better, and it's going to be his second year. So I'm not averse to seeing Perfect on KT. And this roster, like BDD was excellent last year. His regular season performance was incredible, especially in summer. Cuz was good.
And he's obviously got the historical connection of Cuz as well, like they came in together, etc. Yeah.
Cuz was good last year. on a bad team where he had to be kind of the primary carry. So I think like KT, they definitely could be like a third or fourth place team in this league if they hit the right meta and they're doing really well. I just get concerned because when you have Pays, Wei, and Perfect, all of whom are very young players, even though, you know, Pays and Perfect not technically rookies anymore, I would be surprised if they could make like a deep playoff run or anything like that. It feels as though that might be a little bit too much to expect from them.
By the way, speaking of also funny rosters, I like this roster, Monty, because this roster isn't terrible by name value. It just could never actually be good in the server because you'd need time machines. So DRX has Rich, the goat of Hots, who was once upon a time good in the LPL, etc. He played in the LCS, believe it or not. There's a Sponge, I don't know. Cal's coming back from the old KT Super Team. Teddy, remember good old Teddy from Jin Air and that 1 year on T1 we don't talk about because it was the mage year. And then you've even got Life, who I don't think he was ever actually that good, but whatever, he was once upon a time in the top teams. Like on paper, as long as we can exit temporality and exist outside of time where they can all access their peaks, it's not a bad lineup. In reality, probably not a good roster.
Prepare yourselves for the million on cast Life finds a way back to the LCK jokes that are inevitable. Okay. Shout out, watch our Jurassic Park episode on Last Free Nation culture for foreplay. If you haven't seen that yet, it's a good laugh. Thorin gets very angry.
I'm authentic though. I don't phone it in me. I keep it real. Some would say too real, but you know.
Thorin gets very angry about Jurassic Park. And look, you say you don't know Sponge. Sponge had he had some pretty good games, I think, for a new jungler last year, and definitely deserves another shot. We touched on this last show, but Mykles, despite being on Thunder Talk Gaming, was individually quite good.
Oh, don't hit that one. That's not a bad reclamation.
Mykles deserves to be back in the LCK, where he might actually be able to show off and be a little bit competitive. Rich is an interesting one because he's had a very unstable career, but also he is the GOAT of HOTS, and he was the GOAT of HOTS for a reason. He has a knack for gaming, and he did have bright spots. I mean, there was a time where
times he was good, man. Look,
it's LCS, but there were times where halfway through the season when he was on Dignitas, we were saying, is this guy MVP of LCS? Like, very legitimately. Fell off later. That's why I'm saying we had a little bit of variance in his play, but I think there's a possibility that Rich can do some interesting stuff. Teddy is still good, by the way. Teddy was actually one of the better ones.
Teddy. I'll never give him up, mate. Because my problem is that 1 year that he was in T1 was the one where it was the only time ever the bot lane was like brand new champions and fucking like ages. Like, the guy's a traditional ADC. Like, give him a break. So it's just, the problem is his style of play is just obvious, mate. He's never going to be the biggest flashiest player as he. Come on.
Life also just took his tour through the LPL. He was on the FPX team that had Milky Way in it, and honestly, he was the second best player on that team in spring. If we're being real about the great Milky Way,
Rumble being available for support, but yeah, sure. Okay, he was good. I'm
going to say the good things about Life. Here are the good things that we saw in LPL. First off, without his synergy with Milky Way doesn't look anywhere near as good.
Oh no, for sure.
His coordination with his jungler allowed Milky Way to have this exceptional split in spring. The other thing is he was playing, as you say, a lot of kill lanes, Ashe, Rumble, these kind of champions, and he was doing really well. So one of the things is Life is very smart about macro, and he's one of those players like Mickey X where if he can push or if you can unleash him on the map, he's actually very, very dangerous. Now, is he going to have that same level of threat with Sponge compared to Milky Way? Probably not. Are we going to be in a meta where he can play these like wild all-in attack supports? Maybe not. But Life actually did have a very good spring split last year, to his credit. He did exceptionally well, and that FBX team is nowhere near as hyped unless Life plays in that team. So I think Life is exciting. He's definitely an exciting support player, so I enjoy seeing him back. Do I want him on the top teams? Maybe on Genji. Maybe he ends up on Genji. Might be interesting on Genji. But I think like him being on DRX at least gives me a reason to want to watch DRX, if that makes sense.
By the way, the obvious most underwhelming roster moves thus far, true to branding form, is D+. Because it's like, what lack of bold moves they've made, Monty. So the rumour is, they get Beryl back, and then they're putting Siwu with the top lane. Like, from that roster it's like, it's not bad. But again, like, you're just competing for like third or fourth best. At best, by the way. At best.
So Siwu is kind of hyped. Now, again, I'm not... Players like Diablo and Siwu and Wei and these guys coming out of Challenger, I think Chronicle probably knows way more about these guys than I do because I don't pay much attention to Korean Challengers. So there are going to be people who are going to give you way better takes than I can give you about those players. But Beryl... I mean, D+ fixed the problem, right? Which is that they needed some level of fucking shot calling in this team. And Beryl undoubtedly provides that. So I actually don't hate this move because if Beryl isn't going to fix that problem, then this whole roster just needs to be fired into the sun. Like, this is
also, by the way,
fix you should make.
For people confused, it wasn't actually in the end that Mohan was that good. He just wasn't Kellen. You have to understand that distinction. That's the key one there. Like, neither of them were it, bro. Like, we needed a different, but even so, though, fucking mean Beryl's back.
Let me put it this way. Let me phrase this in a different manner. The roster for the last several years of Dom1/D+ Kia has had a certain stink about it, a lack of shot calling ability. And what Beryl does like our sponsor Mando, is remove that. We're hoping it removes that or odor. Now, we know Mando can remove and prevent that odor. Is Beryl the League of Legends Mando equivalent? Well, that's what we have to wait and find out about, guys. But I do have hope that this will actually just make sure that it freshens up their shot calling, makes it a pleasure to be around D plus Kia again, because it has been miserable watching their macro, but you can actually make the right macro decision and use Mando products. And
this is when it's actually good to be washed. Sometimes it's
good to be washed. Is barrel washed? Possibly. You can get washed, though, with Mando's soap and body wash, which prevents body odor before it starts with mandelic acid. So very nice, feels great, smells great. They have manly scents like bourbon leather or clover woods for you. It's not an antiperspirant, so it doesn't have things like aluminum in it. So if you care about such things like I do, this will be an opportunity for you to try it out. And you can get a starter pack through us. So just give all their products a little bit of a try. They have a Mando starter pack for new customers. Last minute stocking stuffers, also a great time. You get these little mini body washes. The starter pack comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. Also, as a sidebar, the cream deodorant is actually what I use most now. I never thought I would use like a lotion deodorant, but I've been using that in my bits. It's worked great. And we have a discount code to help you get hooked on our favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code SUMMONING at shopmando.com. shopmando.com. Support our show and let them know we sent you. So code SUMMONING. There you go at mando.com to get your discount on the starter pack. And lots of good products in there. The wipes are also just amazing if you don't have time to like take a shower, you've been exercising.
Also very good to have around a PC. Just put them next to your PC while you play.
Yeah, exactly. If you've been cooped up in your office or your room all day, before you go out to dinner, go out with your friends, go out to the bars, just freshen up with a wipe. It works amazingly well. If you're camping, great stuff. So thank you very much to Mando. We appreciate them. And hopefully, as we said, Beryl can be the Mando to the macro stink that has been emanating from D plus Kia for several years now. So I guess I don't hate this roster move too much. I feel like if this isn't the silver bullet, there is no silver bullet, effectively.
Right, we're back to talk about more rosters.
Hopefully we got it all under control this time, guys.
I'll just put this out there. I guess there's a couple of other details we can talk about. Like, as I said, I saw on Twitter people saying that Berserker, former C9 ADC, goes to Kwangdong, and this Deserto document, they suggest they go to Brion. The point, by the way, both the teams I did say in the past episodes for the past few years, I did it as a joke, though. I obviously just meant he won't be on a top team. What do you think of that aspect? Because I will say, that is like an interesting approach, Monty, because one thing they haven't actually done as much in Korea is bring back people who make their name in other regions. Like, that's actually kind of a big deal. Like, I wondered, would they even give a fuck about what he did on Cloud9? Would they just think he's just the equivalent of a challenger player? I don't know. What do you think about him coming to the LCK?
Well, he is on Brion, so we could argue that he is the equivalent of a challenger player. I'm not sure this is the best team, but Morgan was re-signed. It's rumored that Hambak, which is KT, basically Hambak is the most hyped up of the new challenger players, the jungler for KT challengers. He's kind of the most hyped up player that's going to be entering the LCK. So presumably like the front runner for Rookie of the Year would be Hambak. He is supposedly going to be on Brion as well because KT's bringing Cuz back. Mid, haven't heard an announcement about that. And Berserker will be with Palu in the bot lane. So realistically, this team should be near the bottom. I don't think they are the bottom team because Fearx is looking extremely bad. But it's possible that Brion is once again the bottom team. So I'm not surprised. Like, Berserker probably didn't get a huge contract or anything like that. He probably didn't have a lot of offers. And if he wanted to go back to Korea, who exactly was he replacing? Remember, if Ruler is coming back and Gumayushi's re-signing, the AD carry role is just so stacked because I will just tell you right now, like, you're dealing with Guma, Ruler, Viper, Pays, Aiming, who are all
probably
above
the best
you.
role in the league. It's probably the best role in the league, mate, if you look. It's pretty good.
And on top of that, like, Jiwoo is actually really good. So if you're going to, first off, I think Nomship probably had a multi-year deal with Jiwoo, so Jiwoo's probably cheap anyway.
Right.
But Jiwoo also just has, I think, an upside that probably, if you're just going to like say, ooh, a player might be a superstar someday, is it really going to be Berserker at this point in time, especially considering he was doing worse over time on Cloud9? Again, part of that could have been motivation issues. Part of that could have been, maybe not the highest, he may not have been playing his best toward the end there. But I do think it's possible that, like, he will get better again, but he's kind of going to have to prove it, right? Whereas Jiwoo, I think, has shown real growth. Also, Teddy was good. So the role is just giga stacked. And do you pay Berserker a bunch of money? Or any of the teams that had players or in search of an AD carry possibly?
Oh, by the way, he is on Kwangdong. It's actually announced on Twitter. It was announced 9 hours ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Actually,
okay. So if he's on Kwangdong instead of Dukdam, you're right. Sorry, go ahead, guys. Kwangdong's roster was
along
in
with
fact,
Life, apparently. Yeah, he's got Life.
Kwangdong's roster was in fact released today. Sorry about that, guys. We were going to get that to in a little bit. So that's the Pioshik roster that Pioshik is going to be on that roster. Dudu's going to be on that roster. Bulldog remains on that roster. I'm not a big Bulldog fan. I think he was basically a 2-trick on Tristana and Corki, and he's always been quite weak in lane. So we haven't seen enough growth from Bulldog for me to be hyped, but maybe that'll happen with a different coach. So CV Max has also left this team, and Rapid Star is taking over. Now, Rapid Star is very interesting from a coaching perspective because last year he was on KT as their strategic coach, and that was the KT roster that did extremely well in summer. And Hirai is not a strategic coach. So if you actually look at the way the game was being played in draft, a lot of that was going to be Rapid Star. And he was actually this year a positional coach on Team Liquid. So he's a very good coach, I think.
He
really understands the game. Yeah. Huge resume. Like basically this guy, obviously he was the mid laner for Frost, like a Zubu Frost and then CJ Frost back in the day. He was in the finals of the 2013 World Championship, and he later retired. He's been basically coaching for like probably close to a decade at this point in time. Was in LPL for a long time. Was with Cloud9 for a while. He's coached all around the world. So if you're a Kwangdong fan, like, look, I like CV Max, but Rapid Star, I think, is going to bring a lot in terms of actual strategy to the table. And this roster also, like, it is going to be kind of whatever, honestly. I just don't have a lot of faith in Bulldog. I think Bulldog is very weak in lane, and so you're going to have to prop up somewhere else on the map, and maybe Life's roaming, as I talked about earlier, in the way he played on FPX will help that. But I mean, this roster is pretty mid. It's pretty mid tier, if we're being honest. So yeah, but I am excited about Rapid Star. I think having him in a head coaching role is long overdue in the LCK, and he should at least bring some level of interest to this team.
So I'm just going to put this out there. You know, CV Max is my boy, because if you notice, Monty, it's the same as why back in the day I always fucked with Reapered, because I like the Korean that is just the guy who stands up like, I am not a number, I am a man, I'm an individual. It's more of a Western approach. So, spoiler, CV Max, I know the obvious place to go, bro. It's called the LPL, you idiot. In the LPL, you can do all your shenanigans, and you can get those crazy rookies. You can bring in your fucking import boys. You can get it all done there, mate. Stop trying to work in this oppressive Korean system where you have to follow all their norms and protocols and go, yes, boss, and do what he says, and then take all the blame. Just go to the LPL and be a maniac. That's what you need to do. That's the league for you, bro. It's the league for you.
Yeah, and by the way, this might now when we're talking about Brion, it might actually result in Dukdam going to Brion now, which would be interesting. Dukdam, like a player who's like pretty whatever, but
some would say he deserves to be on a team like Brion with how he's played in his career. So there is that.
Also, with Kwangdong not having Andil was actually a pretty up-and-coming player. He just had some like health or mental health issues that were preventing him from being on stage regularly. Like he would have to take breaks. But I think in terms of his potential, he was quite good. Just a matter of whether he can consistently play in the games, because I don't know if it was nerves or something, but he would routinely kind of just drift out of the lineup. But I do think like he is potentially good. Yeah. So, I mean, my question, Thorin, is where is Closer going? Is he going to stay on the Sphere X roster? Because I don't think Closer's
maybe
good.
He goes to Brion. Maybe he goes, right?
But yeah, he's kind of like the gatekeeper mid, where he's not good enough to be in playoffs, but he's frequently better than the latest group of rookies or underperformers. So
maybe he goes to the West. He could.
Maybe
By the
he
way,
goes to
that's
LPL?
a sort of play. Could go to LEC or LPL something. Yeah, of course.
Sure. I don't like Closer because I find him like he's just such a known quantity at this point in time that there's nothing about his play that interests or excites me. But he does seem to just maintain his position in the LCK because he's like good enough to stabilize a bad team.
By the way, being as one, this will just be hype, and then two, there's no basis to say any of this shit. I'm just going to do it. Spoiler, I'm just going to say it, Monty. If they run back this exact same lineup, then in 2025, 0 LCK titles for T1. This team, if they make these rosters we're proposing, they're not winning LCK. They're not winning it, mate. It's going to be Hanwha, Genji. One of these two, they're looking fucking monstrous, mate.
I think even you'd have to say that like KT might have an outside shot.
Be interesting, wouldn't it?
Depending on how,
by the way, I just realized one topic.
Develop.
There's a topic I noticed you didn't discuss this on Power Spike, probably because it hadn't fully enough hit its own Power Spike of becoming the main narrative. Bro, do you know what's killing me inside? I'm getting really sick and tired of this like disingenuous narrative. You know, the narrative now, Monty, is we have to reverse engineer that T1 was always the best, but something was stopping them. So the narrative goes, well, of course they couldn't be the best. They were being DDoSed, right? You've got to stop this now. And the reason you have to stop this now, because the logic goes, Monty, that by being in Europe, they weren't DDoSed. Stop pretending they were DDoSed in scrims. You keep doing this, you T1 stands. They were only being DDoSed when they played fucking solo queue. So like that never ever made sense that would be. So you're telling me that Faker couldn't play enough solo queue and that's why he couldn't win the LCK. It's a stupid fucking argument, bro. Because I think people hear DDoSed and they think that means everything they did was DDoSed for like the whole year. It's not like that isn't the reason they were bad. That's not the reason Faker had like a limited champion pool or they weren't good in the fucking AD mid meta. Like it's such a whack take, bro. Because all you've done is just go, well, if I want them to be the best, something drastic must have happened. Oh wait, Worlds was in Europe, then I guess actually, then it was solo. Wow, what is that? That's such a whack narrative, bro. It's such a reach. Reach. Come on.
I think there's probably some truth to the fact that they probably could have played better. Like Faker probably could have played better on AD mids if he had more practice.
Would it? Come on, it wouldn't make you like number one in the world.
No,
like,
I mean, let's just say. People who didn't watch Faker didn't see the truly egregious games where I don't think solo queue was the difference between him like all-inning at level 1 and dying multiple times. Like, I don't think that was what was going on.
Dude, he had a whole bunch of those corky ones where he just hinted straight in the middle of a fight and just died immediately. By the way, spoiler, he even did that at Worlds, guys. We pointed this out on a past episode. There was a couple of times Faker got caught at Worlds where they just won the team fight after, or they won the series and everyone's deleted it from their brain. Like, so now Faker's only clutch, because like the joke is, Faker's actually ascended to Tom Brady level, Monty, where you know there's that famous stat, which is my favorite stat in all of American football. The stat goes that Tom Brady has won more games where he throws 3 interceptions than Aaron Rodgers has won when he throws 3 touchdowns. Like, Faker is at that level, bro. He can like in the series and win, and then they go, I guess he the right move. Like, well, there you go. He can't win.
But he clutched it in the end.
I know. Because I always used to think that was actually the thing about Brady people ignored, is that he did do that thing where it's like, yeah, you let the game go to shit, and at the end you have like the 2 touchdown throws, and it's like, but you're the one who put yourself in that hole. Like, if you'd just done that from quarter 1, you'd have won the game. So there's a bit of that going on. There's a bit of that.
But look, I think
the way more plausible one, which is the one I always go to, is just I actually think at this point it's totally logically just as like somewhat debilitating hand injury. He's played like 1,000,000 years in a row, bro, with no real breaks. Remember, even the back rosters of KT were pretty much SKT rather were playing pretty much every split still, like all the games. Like,
and
you
they
weren't
were making
this
worlds a lot of the time too.
Yeah,
so.
he must have had the most wear and tear by definition of any player in fucking League of Legends history. So unsurprising, he doesn't have some pristine fucking Chovy-esque risk, does it? By the way, spoiler, that'll come for Chovy and Knight one day too when they played 10+ years, of course. Yeah. That's why the biggest part is I don't expect him to be the best all the time. I think it's an absurd standard. I go the other way and go, bro, a guy that can actually still sometimes pull it out 11 years later, that's pretty dope. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, so those are the major roster rumors, guys. The Guangdong Freaks one was just announced, so glad we got to that. Some of those players that were rumored on to be on other teams. I mean, that does leave a question about, like, what is Brian going to do at ADC? That's going to be an interesting conundrum, one might say. Yeah, so I think that covers probably most of the major roster rumors over in LCK.
Also, technically, we don't know yet if he's actually joining a team, but apparently Vikla's back. the ultimate check stealer, king of check stealing.
Hey, he was great on KT, man. He was great on KT.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I still can't. I'll never be able to. Bro, I'm actually so, because we hyped him as well. I've never been so betrayed by a player in shitty LCS. Like the LCS was trash, and he was so egregiously bad.
I think the funny thing is he was like
so gross.
He was coming off the Rookie of the Year. You know, he's like only 18 years old. It's like, yes, FlyQuest got him in LCS, and he's just like complete shit.
He was so bad.
He had to go back to Japan, man. They sent him back to Japan.
I love it.
Will he be back? We'll find out. Rumors are that he might be. Rumors are that he might be back at LCK. We will see. I hope he turns around his career. He's still young enough he could do it. And I think in LCK, the flashes he showed were really good. So he could be good again. I'm not completely out on him. I mean, the 180 on his play was so, like, the whiplash you got from watching him was so crazy. If you,
it's ridiculous.
If you were watching him in Korea versus we were watching him in America. But I just think, like, if that happened quickly and we saw his play and he's still so young, I think that's probably a problem that can be, you know, potentially resolved. Hopefully, I'm hoping. All right, guys.
You want to talk about LPL rosters?
I do. I'm going to talk about Rare Adam leaving, but before we do that, guys, we have one last sponsor for today. And thank you very much to ExpressVPN. They've been great sponsor for us. Yeah, just an altogether
essential for this broadcast being live right now in many ways, Monty.
Yeah, exactly. Essential for the Twitch recording that is going on right now. And by the way, guys, it's not just security on public networks. It's also because your ISP is actually probably looking at what you're doing and collecting data on you. And the thing is that ISPs have a lot of power because they basically operate like monopolies in regions that they serve a lot of the time, especially if you're not in a major city. You may only have one ISP to choose from, and they will take advantage of you. So you can get, you know, obviously they do data caps, they can throttle your bandwidth, but they also can log every website that you visit and collect data on you and then sell that data. If you encrypt your data using ExpressVPN, guess what? They can't do that anymore. And ExpressVPN doesn't save your data, so they're not going to do it either. So that's a great reason to use ExpressVPN. Another great reason is it hides your IP address, so third parties can't track your online activity. It's incredibly easy to use. There's an app that I'm using on my desktop right now. I've got it on my phone. It's basically on all the time. And you can use it, especially if you're going to follow along with us on our culture content like Foreplay. Find those movies in different regions on the streaming services you're already paying for and get the maximum value out of your subscriptions to things like Netflix. So I use it all the time to watch our films over on the Last Free Nation Culture channel. So right now, you can take advantage of ExpressVPN's Black Friday / Cyber Monday offer to get the absolute best VPN deal you will find all year. Use our special link, expressvpn.com/summoning to get 4 extra months with the 12-month plan or 6 extra months with the 24-month plan totally free. That's expressvpn.com/summoning to get an extra 4 or even 6 months of ExpressVPN for free. Thank you guys for signing up for ExpressVPN. I consider it pretty much mandatory for what we do. I mean, I get insane value off it just off of the movies alone that I'm not renting from other services because I just access them via my existing subscription. So it's something that if you're smart will basically pay for itself and offers you peace of mind and better security. So check out ExpressVPN.
And I'll give you an extra reason, Monty, which is depending on where in the world you are. In Europe, for example, I found this out the hard way when I moved to the Netherlands, which is they didn't used to do this, but for a lot of actual sports footage now, Monty, they actually region lock it. Basically, they do like blackouts. So what will happen is if I'm in my normal region of Netherlands and I see, you can imagine, Monty, the England football team or like Liverpool football, like English football, when I go to click that video, I get, sorry, this video cannot be played in your region. So then I pop the VPN on, I change my location, now I can watch the video. So it's actually also just useful for even basic surfing nowadays, mate, and social media
even
stuff.
YouTube
like,
stuff.
We're not in the old world. Yeah, exactly. Not the same on YouTube. On YouTube, they were blocking
for
like
NFL
the actual like
stuff.
football clips. Yeah, exactly. So it's actually mad useful. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, thank you very much to ExpressVPN. Works like a charm. Super easy. All right, let's talk about Rare Adam, because
obviously Nick just mad triggered now. Like a charm. No, no. Back in Vietnam again. No, no. Flash charm. No. Faker. So, the moves. Look at the moves. You know, that's also the worst thing, Monty. Is here's the dopest comment ever. I don't even think this is true, but it's funny, so I'll say it anyway. That could be the name of my biography. Well, that's not true either. Right? What I would do is this. You have to realize when people are actually playing Faker Bro, that remember, most of them probably were 15 when he did those moves, Monty. In your brain, as he's out playing you in a team fight, you are sort of thinking like, oh shit, it's like getting dunked on by Michael Jordan. You know, you're getting posterized. Like, you're like, oh shit, now I'm part of the moves. No, like, and then he's just doing all crazy shot here. No wonder it's intimidating, bro. It's just rent free inside your head. You just know he just did another move. And you're part of it now. You're a victim. You're the one getting knocked out by Mike Tyson. I guess that's what back in this analogy, Mike Tyson would have to still knock people out, but whatever. It's all good. I guess, to be fair, League of Legends isn't rigged.
And boxing would have to be, not be just a meme sport these days. Dear
By the way,
God.
We don't normally do the discourse, but I will just say, Monty, I didn't even watch that fight because I don't give a fuck about some stupid fight. But it's that thing where people showed, and why did I have to put this on the timeline? There's actually a thing, Monty, when he was backstage where you just saw Mike Tyson's ass. You know this?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to see that. I have to see that shit.
I just don't even understand. Like,
fucking old ass.
Look,
it looks like he was like G-string or something. I don't want to see that shit.
Boxing has a lot of problems, guys. Obviously, it was super corrupt for a long time. The fragmenting of the various like circuits and promotions. Like it's been screwed for a long time. I don't even like boxing because it's just the worst version of kickboxing. So why would I watch that?
The problem, not Monty. I was even thinking about this the other day. In esports, it just shows where we're all ridiculous when you actually like aggregate out the views. In esports, people will comment on those influencer boxing matches. They go, "Oh, this is a disgrace. It's not even a real sport. It's a shit." Yeah, you know how many millions those gates make? They make loads of money off that. Esports, we can't even pack out a fucking like 7,000 seater and sell all the tickets to real people who turn up.
It's also the media rights.
So far behind in esports is wild, isn't it?
I mean, the money in boxing is crazy. I mean, that's why Floyd Mayweather is so fucking rich. You know what I mean? Like some of those boxing promotions can make $50 million, $100 million in pay-per-view. Sure, yeah. You know what I mean? It's absolutely nuts. But the thing about boxing is that it's just been so deeply corrupted that now the only why is the most hype boxing event YouTube asshole versus 60-year-old man? What the fuck is that? That's not even a fight.
I know that's also, Monty, a part people don't comment on though, because back in the day, people thought that the mechanism, remember, because the mechanism used to be Jake Paul's not a real boxer and this guy was a boxer, so it's like, can an amateur do it or can a young Here's the genius, Monty. That's not what they captured. What they captured is exactly what torments us. It's that all the Zoomers think they're the shit. So what you get is all the boomers go, "Hey, Mike, watch out for Mike. He'll do some," or Roy Jones Jr. or whatever, or Anderson Silva or whoever it might be. They go, "Hey, my generation, that was the GOAT." And then the Zoomer goes, "Hey, old man, it's not your time. Like, Jake and Logan are going to knock you out, man." And then like that, as a result, every moron, it's like a generational battle in some ways. It's not even actually about these two people fighting. It's about the clash of the generations. There you go.
No, it's just so wild to me because like, why would you even want to watch this? And Jake Paul he's never going to fight anybody who could actually win. It's pretty clear at this point in time. He's not going to fight. He's not going to fight somebody. He will only fight people who are either not in his weight class or not his age, period, or not professional boxers. It's one of those things. And there's literally no point to watch. It's like the shittiest version of a sport that I already considered not very good.
Here's what I think is cool though, Monty. I've actually managed to find an angle no one else has thought of for this, why this one day could actually circle round and become a positive. Because here's what it'd have to happen, Monty. If one day there is a young boxing prodigy who actually is amazing at boxing, but he also has the personality and media understanding to be an influencer as well, that guy will make the most money in the history of sports. Imagine if you were like a YouTuber and influencer and you were a sick box. Bro, you could run the whole game at that point in time. You would make billions of dollars. It'd be crazy, mate. I'm telling you, it'd be mental. You just run the game. All the Zoomers following your YouTube. It'd be the shit. You'd be selling everything, all the fucking pre-workout, everything. You'd be making so much money, mate. It'd be mental.
You could start your own Andrew Tate subscription service.
Basically, yeah.
Amazing. But anyway, back to Rare Adam. Rare Adam, a team that no one will miss. The reason why Vikla might come back to LCK because he was up shitting it up over there on Rare Adam. Look, I'm just happy that LPL is down to 16 teams, which is actually a real number of teams to use in a variety of formats. Now we could do 4 GSL groups, guys. There's so many more opportunities with 16 teams. 17 was like the weirdest number. Why do we have a prime number of teams? That's the fucking worst for formats. It's shit. So
exactly, I agree. Get rid of all prime numbers and ultra prime. Just chuck them in as well. Get rid of them too. They can go as well. Get out the door. Get out of here, you. You don't need to stay. By the way, I'm just going to say, based on history, can we just get rid of Thunder Talk Gaming, Ultra Prime, maybe LGD? I'm not sure that one. I don't know. I guess IG's been resurrected, but some of these orgs need to go, mate. Some of them are just trash, aren't they? Like, why are these in the league?
I mean, RNG is kind of a trash org now, even though they have a good legacy.
Yeah, but they're bringing back Milky Way and prisoning him, maybe. So we'll see on that one. We'll see. Oh, by the way, that's even a thing we didn't totally address earlier. One thing we also could have said on the LCK one is there was obviously rumors, but I actually feel like if they hadn't have had all this salary cap stuff the last couple of years, dude, this is the year where maybe Chovy might have left, bro. This is the year where you tried it that many times in Korea. Someone comes in like 3 years ago and goes, here's $12 million to play for. Then you just go, bro, you go, fuck it, right? Let me just take this adventure and you just see what they do. That could have been interesting. Didn't happen, of course, but...
I mean, I actually wonder if Ruler hadn't announced earlier that he was getting released from his JDG contract, if JDG would, if they kept Ruler, because remember, Ruler was on another year of that contract. If they kept Ruler to that contract, my question is, would that have lured Chovy to JDG?
By the way, imagine that team. Imagine a team with Kanavi, Chovy, and Ruler. Man, that's a pretty fucking...
Sheer is good, man. Sheer is a
team,
good
yeah.
up-and-coming top laner, so... Yeah.
Oh, but then they'd have 3 Koreans, though. Would that not be a problem?
Oh, yeah. They couldn't have Kanavi in that case. That's true.
That's the problem, I guess.
On paper, would be a Chinese resident, but I think they.
I'm assuming not.
They would get a good jungler under those circumstances. They would be able to attract a good jungler.
You know what's sad, Monty? This is how bad it's gotten in being a rookie fan. That like I'm actually just gaslighting myself that it's good if he just plays with the Shy again. Like, fuck it, at this point, you know what? Who gives a shit? Run it back. Yeah, let's go for it. I don't care. Do it. Run it back.
That's not going to turn out the way you think it is.
No, but here's the thing. When you've suffered through the wayward years, and all, you know what? At that point, we'll have the Shy back. You know what, Shanji? You know, I'll take, you know what, the Shy, you're forgiven. You can come back, mate. Just please carry the odd game and don't hit too hard. Just carry the odd game at least, mate. Come on. Because if they did run back the IG roster, that would be pretty interesting. Because Jackie Love's a much better player now. That would be cool. Maybe that could offset it. Obviously, the idea that actually Bowland ever gets to enter the server again is, again, a war crime. Like, that should not even be possible. There should be a law against that. He should actually forcibly be retired. He shouldn't even be allowed the choice. He should be made to retire. Like,
I don't think they run back that whole.
I wasn't even aware that was possible, though. No, but people obviously probably just an inside, but people were implying it's possible. Like, surely that can't be real. What's he been doing?
Bowland hasn't even been playing this year.
I don't know. What's he been doing? Just sat back like, I won Worlds once. Like, shut the fuck up. No, you didn't.
I mean,
only technically Bowland.
In 2023, he was on Ultra Prime for the first split and then Rare Adam for the second split, and he hasn't played in 2024. So I have no idea why they would. I don't think that's serious.
That's also the way that the LPL works, though. It's like, what? Did you do nothing? You're on shit teams? Congrats. You're promoted to a new team with good players. Like, oh, okay, great. Love it. Thanks. By the way, the obvious angle, and this is another one that played out slowly over the off-season, but remember, the big bomb after Worlds was the idea that they wouldn't be keeping BLG together, but now the rumours maybe it's going to run back that whole lineup. By the way, I would love to see that lineup run back again.
Yeah, we need to see that back. Because we didn't, the disappointing thing this year is we didn't get the T1 versus JDG rematch. Like, that fucking sucked. So obviously I would, if BLG has the cash to spend, having the BLG roster come back and like actually try and take down T1 or the Korean team again would be great. I would really enjoy seeing that.
Yes. And it's just a roster where you look at it. Look, obviously there are some issues. What do you do with the jungler? On obviously can't play the way he did at Worlds, but the upside on the team is mega. Like there's some, like, by the way, just those solo lanes are fucking insane. I do think Elk was pretty good at Worlds. Like there's some fucking really good players, and obviously he was mega in Spring. Like some fucking banger players on BLG. You've got all the firepower you need, basically.
On, as I understand it, On and Knight are already signed through the end of next year, so it's whether they can keep Elk, their two junglers, or at least one of the junglers in Bin, whose contract is up. Might be very expensive, but BLG, they're owned by a streaming platform. Billy's a streaming platform. They should have the money in order to put it up for something like this. So we'll see. We will see. The other interesting things that are happening are probably over in the LCS, or LTA North, as it is called now. Oh wait, actually, on this, HLE, while we were recording this, HLE announced that Viper is re-signing. So there's that angle to it as well. So some of the LCS rumors that are happening right now include Palafox going to Shopify Rebellion because Niski initially verbally agreed to go to Shopify Rebellion and then decided he was taking a break rather than be in North America on a shit team. So we get Palafox, who had a very underwhelming 2024, now on this Shopify roster, which, I mean, I don't think Shopify has fans, but if they did have fans, you would probably be bummed to see that.
Logically, they must have fans, because I'm always told that the real secret to doing well at Worlds is NA talent, and that includes contracts, Palafox. So these are the players to have, Monty. Who needs those shit players like, checks notes? Oh, FBI. He was nothing. Who else? It's not, no, it's all NA players, isn't it? This, by the way, what do you think this lineup's going to be like, the Shopify one?
So contracts is supposedly on this lineup. So it's the NRG reunion of contracts and Palafox. B-Boy is supposed to be staying on this roster. It's probably the bright spot, and then Fudge is supposed to be in the top lane. Yeah, I mean, this roster might be like, look, it's thoroughly terrible. Mid. The Niski one, I think, was the interesting thing that could have like pushed them into maybe like top 4 territory, but unless Palafox takes a massive step up in his play, I don't really.
No, that's the bummer for me, is because the one angle you were hoping for, the mechanism via which Shopify would become relevant, was Niski somehow does his magic with the jungler and contracts just like Smurfs the league. Like that would be interesting. That's the sort of play you want him to pilot, but Palafox isn't as interesting a prospect. By the way, Palafox isn't even bad. He's just not an elite superstar player like people imagine he was for 1 year. I mean, by the way, it wasn't even 1 year. It was part of the playoffs and Worlds. That was it. Like, again, I know it's how in the NA you just get the whole year from that. Like, but whatever. It's all good.
The other rumor is that Zeus is going, the Brazilian player who has been a star support player in Brazil, who would be going to Shopify Rebellion. It's an interesting mix of players, but I don't think Shopify is really going to be contending against the Team Liquid roster that's coming back. FlyQuest is also confirmed to be running back all their coaches and all their players for next year. So we did see some initial rumors that FlyQuest was trying to see if maybe Jojo Pian would switch to top lane and Bwipo would actually move into a positional coaching role behind him. So that was really, I think, the only wild card there, because clearly, like, at this point in time, you wouldn't voluntarily swap anybody on FlyQuest. Masu's coming off of Great Worlds. Busio really had a big glow up over summer and into Worlds. Quad had a very, very strong initial split. Inspired is literally the best Western player. So it was only a question of whether you like try and have less volatility in your top side, but you also did make quarterfinals and almost beat Genji at Worlds. So the upside is clearly there. I think the coaches are good. FlyQuest running it back is the right opportunity. The other one is Surdy, who has been a hyped up prospect from NA, is allegedly signing with Dignitas, which may entice some people. I don't watch tier 2 in NA, so I won't comment on that. And then the other one that might be happening is FBI back to 100 Thieves. So with teams exploding, FBI finds a new home because 100 Thieves had an unstable bot lane, but probably 100 Thieves still has Ayla. So how excited are you about that? FBI also didn't look great in 2024. He certainly isn't the force that he was the last time he was on 100 Thieves. I don't know if as a 100 Thieves fan, you're mega excited about that or not. It's probably better than it was, to be fair. But I don't know if it's like a massive upgrade or anything like that. You interested in any of these LCS rosters?
A lot of them just don't look that inspiring, you know. It's not really that interesting.
The problem is that even with Cloud9's changes, it doesn't feel like it's the league has been shaken up. It doesn't feel like it just feels like FlyQuest and Team Liquid again. And something would have to go horribly wrong in order to upset that. Even if Dignitas is like running back the majority of their roster, like Sven was their best player and Jensen was very bad. I don't know why you would keep.
Like, haven't you noticed how, unless you find someone like a quad type player off in like Korea who hasn't made it to the top yet, bro, you can tell the league doesn't have the millions of dollars it used to have. Like, where are the massive imports? Where are the giant names? Like, they don't go here anymore. Yeah, that's a big deal right there. Mate, when Niski's saying no to you, might just be time to wrap it up, mate. Last one out, turn the light off. What are we doing? Niski, what position was he in? Beggars can't be choosers, mate. I know. Exactly.
I also just don't think most of the LEC stuff we covered on the last episode, I don't think there's been like massive movement that I've seen over in the LEC. Like most of the interesting stuff has kind of already gone down over there. We were just waiting for a lot of the dominoes to fall in Korea because a lot of the Korean teams were waiting until today to like announce the release of their players and the signing of new rosters.
All I would say is if you want to know more about G2, you could watch the Sackdown episode with Mickey X.
There you go. Exactly. Get yourself informed. And also his future team, potentially. So yeah, the LEC, I don't think is too terribly interesting right now. LPL is just, who the fuck knows what's going on over there. We just have to, as far as I'm concerned, like I don't have insight into like firsthand insight into the LPL rumors. So I'm always a little bit more reluctant to discuss them because it feels as though everything is kind of like very much in flux over there still. And it seems like a lot of teams are going to be signing a lot of new players or developing players. And, you know, maybe the more veteran players are scattered around the rosters a bit more. But I'm sure next week we'll have more to talk about because most of these rosters should be done in the next like week or so. Because a lot of times the way roster construction works is multiple teams are waiting for one player to make a decision. And when that one player makes the decision about which team they're going for, then all of the other dominoes start to fall because the teams are then enacting their backup plans when they don't get that player. And also the players are also waiting for that player to sign so they know which team they want to play on so they have a better chance to win, obviously. This happens in every region, but that's why it can take some time. Yeah. I think that about closes it up with the roster moves for this week. Shall we take a brief break and then do some viewer questions?
Sure.
All right. We'll see you guys in a couple minutes.
Right, now is the time where we take questions from viewers, which, as we did promise on the last episode, we are actually rethinking what we're going to do with people who subscribe to the Discord, Last Free Nation. They won't just be able to ask a question here. There will still be that, but we're going to figure out some other perks as well and try and like restructure it to make it more appealing. But obviously right now, the current perk, as it has been for a while, is if you are a subscriber, you will have access to a channel where you can ask us a question. And depending on time, we sometimes do them all. We sometimes just do the interesting ones. We just pass them.
Yeah, and not that this perk will disappear. We're figuring out a way where we can maintain this perk while adding many other perks for you guys. Which four esports figures would you recast in a modern remake of Sallow? The 120 Days of Saddam.
I don't know about that. The problem with that is that would also be like a really inappropriate question to answer since they're doing stuff like fucking kids and eating shit and stuff in that movie. So I don't know about
architect
that.
of Korean esports based Joe.
Okay, it's a funny question. Yeah,
it's a funny question, obviously. But we can't answer that. I feel like this T1 is most similar to the old Samsung Galaxy T.
That is the sort of question Joe Marsh indeed might ponder. It's like, which one of my players would I have in a fucked up degenerate after I oil owner up or whatever? Like, okay, fair enough. Okay, so. Maybe Joe Marsh himself. Maybe I'd cast him in it. There you go.
I feel like this T1 is most similar to the old Samsung team in terms of narrative, almost like a super Samsung. Samsung could not win a best of 5 in LCK, but made 3 straight Worlds with the same 5 players on the roster and made 2 straight World Finals. If people think Worlds performance are so much more important, why does no one mention them as one of the greatest teams? Actually, not a bad point. Actually,
not
not
about
a
that
bad
logic.
point.
They're like a mini dynasty or something. Yeah. And they almost won 2 Worlds. They almost went back to back.
I do think that roster is underrated. Particularly, I mean, there are a lot of good players on those teams, but like Cuvée, I think is kind of criminally underrated. Like Cuvée was very good as a top laner, and Ambition was also very good as a jungler. So I think there are aspects of those teams that people like don't respect, because I feel like some of these players, like Cuvée, just like falls into Crown's bucket for weird reasons, even though he was way better than Crown. But nobody ever talks about Cuvée, which is a bummer.
Also shows you the longevity Ruler's had. He's still considered potentially the best ADC in the world, like 8 years later or something. So it's pretty good. It's pretty fucking good, man.
Thoughts on the movie Gone Girl? I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen that one? I think you would like it, actually. It's pretty good. I mean, it's a David Fincher one. I would say it was probably slightly overrated, but it is pretty good. Like, if you like thrillers, it is a good thriller in terms of like you probably won't
I'm familiar
be able to see
with
where
it. I
it's
just
going.
haven't seen it.
And like, it is quite interesting what it sort of like tries to say about like relationships and how you're perceived in public from private. So I thought it was pretty good. Like the performances are pretty good too. It's actually, it's all around pretty good film. Actually, it's a solid like, it's maybe like a 8 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10. It's pretty up there. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I rewatched it not long ago.
Do either of you have any inside knowledge about how much revenue World Skins actually generate for teams? During this esports winter, getting that skin seemed like an enormous advantage for T1 and the LCK as a whole. Yes, true. I mean, many millions of dollars. Riot has publicly said that 3 of their top 6 skins of all time are World Skins. Okay, so these skins generate massive amounts of money. Now, does Riot get a huge chunk of that money? yes, but the leagues, I mean, the way that the revenue pool works, I'm not sure, because look, guys, the revenue pool was just renegotiated, so probably some of that money goes into the pool for every single rev sharing for every professional team. Some of it goes into the region, so it'll go into the LCK or LPL or whoever won. Some of it will go into the team, and some of it, as I understand it, goes directly to the players. For their individual skins. So I think there's kind of there's definitely a split there, and with Riot probably getting the single biggest chunk.
By the way, I always will love as well that the player who has won far and away the most skins in history doesn't use skins. That will forever be the ultimate karmic justice for Riot, Monty. That Faker won all those skins and then doesn't use them.
It is very funny.
It's so sick, bro. He could have made them so many more millions. It's
I think it's just funny too, because he would actually personally benefit from those skins being sold more, and he just won't do it. It's pretty based.
I love it. It is. It's fire.
I thought Monty's bit comparing the Narnia. I was there when the old magic was written, with him being the one that was writing the Faker lore from the beginning, was hilarious. I mean, it's true. It does feel insane to me to be told about the history of Faker when I was the one writing it. That being said, given that Monty admittedly was the original Faker glazer or fellator, come on, there's a word for that, guys, and was responsible for building the Faker lore, how much is he to blame for the rabid Faker obsessed T1 fan base of today? That wasn't me, dude. I didn't make them the weird K-pop fans. That happened later. That happened much later. Faker fans were cool back when I was in control of the Faker narrative, because I would tell the weird ones to fuck off.
Here's the distinction I'll give you. Notice, because this happens in every sport, Monty. It's very different, the guy who's a fan because that player's the best, and the guy who's a fan because that player won. There's a key distinction to be made there. The modern fan they won't even hate. They're not a fan of Faker playing Rise in Season 5 or Ari in Season 3. They're a fan because their brain goes, he's the GOAT and has the GOAT resume. So if I say he's the GOAT, I'm the smart one. Like that's like half the mechanism as far as I can tell. So it's why they just assume everyone who doesn't say he's the best now doesn't think he's the GOAT or something weird, which I'll never understand, because as far as I know, doesn't everyone, I mean, even I say he's the GOAT because most people think greatest should include resumes. So you can't argue with the resume, can you? That's why I do that one where I say Rookie is the GOAT. He is just the best of all time. Faker's the greatest. Rookie's the best. There you go. See how I do that? It's all good.
Surprise, Riot has suddenly released a long-awaited practice tool for teams with the ability to start from any place in a replay. Everything you'd want for scrims, etc. This is not real. This is just a supposition, guys. Which player, team, and or coach do you think would take the most advantage of this in the near future?
The premise again.
So in a world where Riot released the long-awaited practice tool for teams with the ability to start from any place in a replay.
Oh,
so basically,
right, okay.
It allows you to play multiple times from the same game state. So this
I feel like the obvious people is people who need better macro, if you know what I mean. Wouldn't that be the people who'd improve?
Yeah, D+ probably, you know. If teams were able to drill, because like the real problem, guys, is that because there's not a good way to practice League of Legends efficiently, and the practice tool where you could get to a point in the game and both teams would agree to like basically chrono break multiple times into the same game state to experiment with different like objective control or late game scenarios is what really is lacking in League of Legends. That's why a lot of games that go really long just turn into clown fiestas, because the teams just never have a chance to practice those scenarios, right? So I think teams with bad macro would be obviously number one. And I mean, any good strategic coach, I think, would be very, very good at using that. I mean, Gen G would obviously be super good at using that. Yeah, look, I think many teams would benefit. I don't know if there's a specific one.
By the way, an obvious one of the team would have been Cloud9's roster. They could have used a bit of fucking ability to test out a bunch of scenarios, you know. Any team with sus macro to me is an obvious one, you know. Maybe Fnatic.
Here's an interesting one. Would you rather be Golem or Reek? The factor that makes this not cut and dry for me is the huge timescale difference between the two characters' existences.
Here's the thing. Technically, Golem is actually indirectly the savior of all of Middle-earth. He is the savior in the end, even though he's wretched. Whereas the difference is what was done to Reek. I've always said this, Monty. That is the main thing that killed Game of Thrones to me, was that plot line. When I realized, wait a minute, so the premise is you're going to take a character, just torture him. By the way, it felt like you were being tortured when you were watching that, because the level of like gaslighting and it lasted so many years, Monty. It was years they were torturing this guy. And then they gave you the least satisfying like revenge. He didn't even get rid of it. It was just that the other people got the revenge. It was shit. So I would never be the Reek character. I think the Reek one is one of the worst on-camera things I've ever seen happen. It's terrible, isn't it? I'd rather be Golem that. At least Golem's just fucking chilling. He's spelunking. He's got a magic ring. He's fucking eating lovely wriggly fish, all nice and fresh. He's on that carnivore diet,
He's
you know.
Free. Golem, his mind may be corrupted, but he is free.
Yeah.
He is free.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who do you think was the best Western player in the past 3 world championships?
Oh, and technically, there was technically good in Golem. He had that like split personality. There was the cool one that was like, sure. Oh, Master wouldn't do that to us, you know. Basically, the funny thing is, he had one personality that reminded me of the people who get fucked by Riot. Actually, God, Master would never do that. Master loves us. Master gives us food and a broadcast and money and everything. Flies us to worlds. Like, no, Master hates you. Master is cynical and it would destroy you. And obviously, the Master is a liar. What was the other one? What was the next one?
Who do you think was the best Western player in the past 3 world championships?
Okay, trick question, because Froggen didn't play in the last 3 world championships. So let me think. Who would it be? The last 3.
Caps didn't make quarters in the last 2.
True.
Or was it inspired this last year? Probably, right?
Yeah, but that's just 1 year, though, isn't it? So who would it be? I don't know. That's a hard one. Because if you're aggregating over 3 years, not even that many players can be in the mix. So I don't know. Maybe it's still Caps and Sama, something like that, right? Probably.
I mean, I think it was inspired this year, but if we think about last year, it was probably still Caps. Because like it's not like NRG, even though they made quarters, was ultra impressive.
Also, for some weird reason, I like the way everyone keeps saying that as well, that they don't add the context. They go, 2 years in a row, G2 didn't make quarters. Have you seen the draws they're getting? Are we just going to pretend that's not a factor? Are we just going to pretend like they're drawing GAM and then losing to them or something? Like, why are we doing this? Like, they've had nightmare draws, but okay. Sadly, the real answer to that question is we've just realised what a bomber it is because, spoiler, the gap's enormous between the West and fucking Asia now, mate. If the gap is, we're almost back 10 years ago. The gap is like enormous again, isn't it? Like you just don't expect anyone to win now.
Well,
That's why actually that FlyQuest win in context would have been enormous. Would have been like the biggest upset ever from the West, probably.
Well, the interesting thing is it's probably somebody from Rogue from 2022.
Sure. Could be Odo Amne or something, maybe.
Yeah.
When he had the Maokai, it was pretty good.
How much are other Riot offices involved in patch changes? No, not at all. Just HQ. Okay. End of that one. The last 4-play art was fantastic. I love the psychological horror films. They're much more my vibe than supernatural or gore. Me too. A movie that I have watched recently that fits this category is the 2022 Dutch-Danish movie Speak No Evil, recently remade with James McAvoy. It still lingers in my mind, and I highly recommend it. Now, my question is there a movie, horror, other genre you've seen recently, a long time ago, that its message or moral question still crosses your mind from time to time? A movie where the moral questions cross our mind.
Let me think. What would apply to that? I'm trying to think what would even work for that.
Just the morality of something that makes you consider it. I don't know. Rashomon's always good for that.
I don't know. It's the morality thing that I find hard. I don't really know what the answer to that be. I'm not sure.
Not a movie. Merchant of Venice, always a good one. Shakespeare for morality, moral questions. Hamlet. I think, mostly I think about Shakespeare or something like that, or books, more than I think about films. I could probably think about it given a long enough timeline. Favorite drug? Look, man, I like many drugs. Use in moderation. I don't know if I have a particular favorite.
I mean, the answer in theory is probably caffeine, since I use it almost every day.
Sure.
Just or sugar, but the problem is I do try to stay away from sugar if I can. So probably caffeine, I guess.
Hi, I recently watched State of Play after Thorin's recommendation. Great documentary, guys, if you haven't seen it. Now I'd love to dive deeper into Brood War. What do you think were the best years to watch StarCraft? Any cool storylines or narratives you recommend checking out? Thanks. Well, I
do think, basically the time when Flash, Bisu, J-Dog and Stork came along, so we're talking like mid-2000s to the end of the 2000s. Like that, to me, that was the prime, because it was like all the races were good, all the matchups were good, the game was pretty sick, and those were just excellent players in all the races. So I always thought that was the glory. For me, that was like the glory age. Like the problem with the other ages is if you want to watch like the old school people like Boxer and Isle of Hoof and stuff, you have to sort of know more about like what the patch was and the meta was back then. I feel like the era I'm describing was almost like just the zenith of the game for me. And also everyone was super active. There was no like StarCraft 2 to distract you. There's no Kesper lawsuit or whatever. So it was just like the golden age of esports for me.
It also matured enough by that point in time that the game was super interesting. Like a lot of early StarCraft, it was just like any early esport. Like the game wasn't as complex. It hadn't kind of reached the beauty that they'd figured out later on. So I agree with that. That time period, though, I think it was 2008 when State of Play was filmed. It's a documentary, guys, it's a super interesting documentary because what they do is they follow like a star player. So they follow J-Dong, and then they follow like a mid-tier player, and then they follow an amateur player trying to crack into the professional scene. And so they weave these three storylines. It's a great documentary.
Oh, by the way, I actually thought of one while you were answering. Here's the answer I can give to the previous question.
Okay.
Since we watched for the 4-play arc the film Prisoners, I think Prisoners contains some quite interesting, like moral aspects and things to think about. Like, for example, obviously a major question that film asks, funnily enough, by the way, it would have been very topical a decade earlier, Monty. It's essentially the question of rendition, which is if you torture people, is the information you get valuable, and or can it justify the means that you did it by if it means you could save someone important like who you loved? By the way, that's basically what the whole like fucking Guantanamo Bay discussion was about in the 2000s. So I think that's actually like, to me, that is the central dilemma of the film, because when you're watching that film, Monty, it's like asking said on our review, part of you there's a part of you who does agree with that main character of Hugh Jackman. And it is sort of like, look, if it was your daughter, you got to get the fucking info of this guy. But then part of you is horrified by it. I thought that was like a very good example of a film that sort of forces you to face the moral quandary and without giving you an answer, by the way. It doesn't really have a conclusion, right? Who can know?
Yeah, it's a good one. A very enjoyable film. Idea for the off-season or Monty stream could review double features of certain players' games back-to-back that have a cool contrast, like Peanut, and one game is a crazy mechanical game earlier in his career, and then a game later in his career is like a cerebral poppy low-kill game. That would be fun, actually, to look at just player development, just like snapshots in their career. That would be fun.
You can obviously do fakers, all loads of great players you can do for like Yankos, yeah, loads.
Have you guys seen this game called Teamfight Manager on Steam? I have not.
Never heard of it.
I know you're both busy and don't have much time for games, but it's an esports manager / champion draft simulator of running a MOBA game pro team. Indie game. Oh, cool. I might check that out. I'm actually interested in that. I'll take a look at that. After watching the
joke, here's the free joke for you. Obviously, that is actually a great invention because if we can just give that to Fly from Rogue, he can just virtually fuck up his team's roster instead of in real life.
Jesus,
so there's the free joke for you. There's the free joke.
After watching the recent Steak and banter with M&M's, this segment about the Blast Singapore, someone mentioned that pros of the Asian Valorant teams were ex-pros and that in Valorant there are many elite Asian teams in that game.
Yes. And?
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to, it's phrased awkwardly. Okay. I understand now. Which team org that's in the Valorant circuit now were to move to CS2 would boost CS's popularity in the Asian scene? So which Asian Valorant roster would boost?
I can't do this all. I can't keep doing this, Monty. I can't keep being asked every year of my life if you make the best cargo cult ever, will they ever come with the planes and all the food? No, cargo cult behavior does not work. Are you ready, Monty? Holding a world championship for a game in a country doesn't make a casual player start playing the game. There's no connection. Sure. Having a popular team in a country doesn't make the people start playing the game. It doesn't happen like that. Like by his logic, Monty, if you make a T1 CS team, then it's going to become huge in Korea. It's not going to move the needle. So my problem is, if you want an org to come over, I would just pick someone like T1 or Gen G, wouldn't I? Like the giant orgs that have the money. But it won't actually affect, like what he wants is this to like spark Asian interest. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, that is cargo cult thinking. You're thinking that if essentially, Monty, if you just make a building, write supermarket on the outside and put a load of vials, when you come the next morning, there should be fresh bread in the bakery. It's like, no, that part will never happen. Like that's not how this works. So essentially, it's okay. It's all good. But as I've said a million times over, I'll do the 10-second version of it. Here's how a casual player becomes a player of an esports game in Asia. They go to a PC cafe, it is installed on the machine, they play it with their friends. If it isn't installed on the machine and their friends don't play it, nobody is playing the game.
That's
so
the real problem is that
Valve... I'd love it to be huge in Korea too, but it just isn't going to be, unfortunately, currently.
Yeah, Valve has really fumbled on distribution in Asia. And that has been the biggest issue.
I'll give Riot credit. Riot literally has had Valorant. I think Valorant's 4th in the PC bang. Ratings were like 5% or something. One thing. They actually have succeeded with Valorant in China and Korea in a way that Valve did it with CS, the superior game in theory. So
which is also outrageous because it's not because Koreans don't play tactical shooters, because they had Sudden Attack, the fucking trash tier tac shooter that was very popular for years and 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 years in Korea. Like, every Korean man has to go to the military. They are like, people like tac shooters. They are all military trained.
They did an article the other day on HLTV, Monty. This is so timely, about a player called like, I think it's like Exine or something. I can't remember how it's pronounced his name. But basically, Monty, the reason they did an article is he's like the only CSGO player from Korea left. All the rest just play Valorant, bro. They're all just in Valorant now. Like, he's like the only lunatic who still plays. He doesn't even play the Korean team anymore. He plays in some like, I think like, I don't know, like fucking Indonesia or something mental. Like, so it's ridiculous. Like, there's no interest, sadly. So if I can just choose it without the aspect he said, obviously I'd choose like Gen G or T1, wouldn't I? They're just giant orgs that you want in the game. Obviously Gen G used to be in the game. They had an NA lineup, sadly, but Flashpoint and Lekoff fucking ruined that, didn't they? So shout out to that.
Are your favorite pieces of media ones that touch on themes and values that you were already interested in, or do they shift your interest towards something new? For example, I remember Monty saying that The Master and Margarita is one of his favorite books. True. And I want to know if his feelings about cowardice came from there, if we
By the
already
way,
had
I've got an angle for you. I've got an angle for you. You know, one thing I always tell you I'm sick of is people are shit at recommending stuff because they can't sell you it. I will sell you Master and Margarita. Here's why you would want to read this book or watch a film version of it. By the way, there's actually very good Russian film versions of it. There's one not that long ago with like really good graphics and shit. It literally is a story which is almost like Joycean. It tries to combine like all eras of history and time into like everyday things and then parallels. So, for example, within this, are you ready? This is straight fire. They recapitulate Jesus talking to Pontius Pilate, and the dialogue is all changed. It has a different perspective, and it's from like a Russian philosophical. It's fucking super interesting. But the problem is, people just tell you that first thing of like the devil comes to town with a cat. That part doesn't sound as cool. That sounds like some Hans Christian Andersen shit. It's the angle I'm saying. You get to see like different aspects of history in a different way. And then also, by the way, without spoilers, it's got like a whole subplot about like witches and supernatural. It's fucking fire, mate. And it's obviously contained, if you do know things about the communist system, it's clearly also like referencing like Stalin and fucking their oppressive system. It's actually like a masterwork. It is, but it's you've got to get like the hook though, because it's really long as well. It is really long too.
So the concept of this is people, like you said, people will sell it to you as like, oh yeah, the devil, you know, comes into Moscow with his retinue and there's like a talking cat. But the thing is that the master in the book is this author who is writing his own version of the Pontius Pilate and Christ story from like Pontius Pilate's perspective. So the book is actually interspersed. The narratives are interwoven. And one of the narratives is what's going on in Moscow. And the other narrative is just the book about Pontius Pilate and Christ that the master is writing. And it is fucking insanely good.
Really
like,
interesting.
This book is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really, really cool. It's like Thorin said, it's very subversive but you know, it's one of those books that Bulgakov, who's the author, kind of got away with it at the time because it's like just metaphorical enough not to like
they claim he had to wait though years and years for it was released. I think it was like suppressed initially, and then like the whole point was that's basically the other thing, Monty. This was an era where you can't write anything overt because you'll immediately get wrecked. You have to sort of make it seem like this is just a story, but then you try to
about all this magic.
Sure. So yeah, by the way, that is a good one to watch. What was the end of the question though?
Sorry. So the question was basically like, are your favorite pieces of media ones that touch on themes and values that you were already interested in, or do they shift your interest towards something new? Master and Margarita wanted to know if my feelings about cowardice came from there, or if I already had a distaste for cowardice by the time I read it. That's an interesting chicken and egg question, because I think that obviously your values are going to be shaped by the art that you encounter. That's like the purpose of art, is having profound personal revelation. So I don't know on that specific front. I can say that I personally have an extreme distaste of cowardice because, I mean, by all my actions, I value standing up for my beliefs very, very publicly, and I have always done so, right? Even at what other people would consider a cost to my career. I don't consider that a cost to my career because at the end of the day, I would rather die with my values than have $5 more in my bank account. And also, I believe that when I have been, quote, punished for standing up for myself, all it did was reveal the shitty people I was around, and then I just get rid of them from my life. And it also simultaneously reveals the good people that you're around and how you should double down on your relationships with those people. So I just view it as kind of an unmasking and a victory. But yes, I do find cowardice very distasteful, but I wouldn't say I got that. But to the question of like, certainly you're going to gravitate towards themes and art that resonates with you and your values, but also the fundamental purpose of art is to challenge those values. So like, I enjoy satire for that reason. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's both ways to engage with it. I'm not sure if I am more attracted to one or the other.
I would say in general, I actually prefer the former. I think it's more interesting to actually see like your ideas and your principles like play out in even though this is a fantasy world, obviously, it's just interesting to see like how would they be put into different situations and scenarios. I think I'd go with the former.
The downfall of the LCS has great potential as an esports bent version of All Is Quiet on the Western Front. World War I, okay. Would Mark Z be the best character to follow in this development? What are some scenes you would look forward to seeing? I mean, Mark Z is you know, if we think about World War One, the thing about World War One is like it was one of the stupidest wars of all time. Not only for the reasons why it was fought, but for the fact that even the combat was stupid. Like you basically couldn't get beyond the railheads. Like you
I mean,
couldn't
here's
get
the problem, Monty. It all depends on what you think the premise of the war is. I go along an angle. It's actually an occult metaphysical one, that it was actually like a mass fucking culling of young people. I'll tell you what, it was incredibly effective at that, Monty. That is absolutely all it did, as far as I can tell, is take the young people of a bunch of nations, just kill them all in a blender. Like, basically,
yeah.
it was a nightmare.
Yeah. And but it's like it was even
to
just
be fair, I'm not like an expert in military history, but people also say that's the war where like it had the most extreme like jump up and like tech stuff. So for example, I believe there's stuff like that's actually the war where obviously the British stopped wearing like stuff like red and stuff, Monty, but supposedly like the French kept wearing blue or something initially, like stupid like that. And then you had that situation where for real, people on horses with swords were coming up against like machine guns and stuff. So it's like,
well, the Russians
it's almost
were
like like my analogy is it's like civilization, like the video game.
Yes.
It's like you've got one tech tree that's too advanced and one's too that's going to get destroyed.
The Russians were literally like just sending peasants at machine gun nests, like charging them with pitchforks and just overwhelming with numbers. I mean, it was a psychotic war, guys. But the technology also, it was like, so you had the railroad, so you could get the stuff to the trenches, but when the railhead ended, there was no way to really like push forward very efficiently because there were machine guns and trenches, and so when you tried to like go over the top, you would just die, and then everybody would just be gassed from time to time because you had the shitty little biplanes like flying around releasing mustard gas. Like it was a very weird war. You know, it wasn't like World War II where you had like the blitz tactics where you had these giant bombers that could soften people up and the tanks roll in and you could actually like take ground. It was basically just an entire no man's land of just pointless death forever. I mean, it truly.
So you
awful.
notice the part for me that I think breaks people's morale about wars like that as well is it even removes the notion of individual agency. Like you don't have the ancient warrior who's a great swordsman or spearman. It's just you're just another body, and if you happen to get shot by the random artillery, you're dead. That's it. Like it's what's crazy is you can see it. You can see how it's the other way around. It's not that people were nihilistic and the world war happened. Like the nihilism was caused by the war because that just made it feel like you're just in an ant colony and your part just got the fucking bleach poured on it. And if you happen to be that part, you're dead. If you weren't, you got lucky and you weren't. Like that, it doesn't even make you feel like there's a narrative or a purpose to that. In fact, it makes the whole soldier class suddenly just become cannon fodder to some degree, which is kind of depressing, right? You want to believe they're like people protecting you and they're great people and they're using their skill and their ability and their all this shit.
The only people I think who like were the heroes or like the larger than life characters in that war were the fighter aces, like the Red Baron, right?
Oh, sure.
But even then,
the people sure, the people doing all the dueling and shit like that. You mean the dog
in the skies, yeah. But like even those planes were just like shitty biplanes that just randomly fell out of the skies half the time. It's incredibly dangerous. So, you know, not a lot of romance in that war and not a lot of glory, I suppose, just like the LCS. But the downfall, I don't know if I would say that, but it is. I mean, this is the stagnation of LCS right now. Is it's like the LCS is like World War One in that what you're hearing is the propaganda from the nations, like glorious victory in France for the American boys. It's like, no, they just like ran 50 yards across to the next trench, guys. Like no movement is actually happening, right? It's just a total waste of resources and there's no actual movement towards victory. And I guess that's what the LCS feels like, is just like a bunch of nonsense propaganda coming out about how great it is, even though it was obviously way better in years past. And it's just like, it feels rather pointless and stagnant at the current point in time. What are your favorite storylines in competitive LoL history that people either underrate or don't talk about enough?
Just narratives, basically.
Yeah, underappreciated narratives in LoL history.
I mean, actually, there's one that we've highlighted quite a lot this year, which is I do think actually that when you look at the LPL, think of what the LPL is. By the way, we also built these narratives. It's the region where everyone fights early. Team fighting is the be-all and end-all of the game. And traditionally, you remember the original narrative of the LPL was it didn't have junglers or supports, right? I do think that actually the career of Mako, he is like one of the greatest unicorns ever. Yes. How did a brain support, like, bro, he should be Korean. Like, this guy would make way more sense to some core JJ figure, but he's some Chinese support who's, by the way, had insane longevity, and actually no one else has really done it like him. Every other support is the on-type lunatic. You go in on the Rakan, you do some crazy plays. This guy actually is more like a Korean control support for me. I love it. It's one of the players I think is mad underrated in history, right? As you say, never gets in any of the bloody lists, mate.
A lot of the storylines are just going to come out of LPL because it was underwatched. I mean, yes. Frankly, like, I think there's a narrative that Xiaohu is a top 3 mid laner of all time. Nobody's ever talking about that.
By the way, have you noticed, Monty, how convenient that is, how that works? You know how when I'm talking about Rookie being better than Faker, I'm obviously talking about how he played, not his resume. People will go, you moron, look at his resume. Then I talk about Xiaohu and they go, yeah, but ignore his resume. Look how he was playing, though. It's like, oh, go fuck yourself. By the way, he won MSI from 2 positions, for fuck's sake. And remember, I always say this, Monty, in theory, he is the most successful role swap in history. He was not only one of the best players in the world and an MVP of the LPL and MSI winner at mid, he swapped to top lane and was probably the best top laner while shot calling. Like, I think that, I agree, that's another insanely underrated player. Like, if this guy was an LCK player, he would have been celebrated so fucking much, mate. He was an amazing player, yeah.
Now, also, I mean, you guys know this one, the one I bang about all the time. Score is undoubtedly one of the greatest junglers of all time. It's just nobody ever saw him because he went to so few worlds and like international competition. So if you weren't paying attention, he was also on like a lot of bad KT teams. So
that's also the easiest position to just have a pleb not understand what you were doing. They're going to be like, well, why didn't you get the gank? Like, they don't know if he pathed right, if he did some genius move, if he actually got there in time, but the guy lost the fight. Like, they're not looking at that. Like, the problem with that is you can easily make loads of great pathing moves. By the way, Tian did this. You can do this as a jungler and then still lose the game. You might have been the best, though.
Yep. So those are a few for you. Is IPL 5 still considered the best League of Legends tournament in history, or has any modern tournament taken that place by now? I think the new MSI format is on par with IPL 5. I think the problem is, like, IPL 5 was a great tournament.
MSI, the 2023 one was really good in my opinion. I thought that was a straight fire tournament.
Yeah. The MSI, since they've redone the format, is very good. It's a very good tournament. And it just goes to show that the gap between... There's a sad gap between IPL 5 and the revamped MSI format in terms of international competition. Because if we're just purely talking about domestic, LPL playoffs have been great for a number of years now.
This will tilt all the T1 stands, because do you know another reason why you guys should want Worlds to have double a limb? Because if Worlds had double a limb, then suddenly actually international play does become more important than domestic, even more so though. Like, if T1 did nothing all year except EWC and Worlds, but Worlds had been double a limb and they'd won, I would give that a lot more fucking status as a win. The problem is, because of the single limb aspect, nobody knows if you run back BLG T1 what happens. Nobody can know, right? Who knows? Maybe T1 wins easily, maybe they lose. Yeah. But if you did it twice, I feel like it would make the result so much more cemented, as it were.
Well, that's
now. Look, I understand. Then a moron back in the day would have been freak. Would just go, well, then why didn't we then run it a third time, Thorin, to make it even more? It's like, yeah, that's right. Take it to absurdity every time. I'd absurd them. We understand that, freak. It's all good. Again, I'll point out the classic one. I think it was Freak back in the day. On Reddit, I said you should move on. Listen to how this take is aged. Because you know how you morons go, your takes are shit, Thorin. No, my takes just become reality in the end. So you don't know that they were great takes, and you think everyone thought that. So back in the day, there was a very real discussion of should LCS have best of 5 for all playoff series. People like Freak were like, nah, because like best of 5's for the final, and then best of 3's enough. And then when I pointed out, yeah, but you're going to have greater variance in best of 3, they were like, all right then, why don't we have best of 69 then? It's like, well, again, you've done ad absurdum, haven't you? Like, great, well done, mate. Thank you for that. Chat about you.
All right, last question. This is not for me. It's for you, because I can't answer this one. Can you contextualize the career of John Jones for someone who doesn't watch MMA? So useful for me.
The problem is, basically, I can't really think of another equivalent in sports, because first of all, in his sport, because it's prize fighting, And it's just about, can you get a license to fight? They don't give a fuck what you've done in your life, what you've done in politics. Like, you could, by the way, Monty, you could literally, this is happening, you could literally support Russia in the Ukraine war. They'll still let you fight. You might just have to fight in, Abu Dhabi or something. Like, you can do it. All they care about is the money. So here's the reason why I can't compare him to any other sports figure. He probably is the GOAT of MMA. Like, he's the only fighter I've ever seen where if he ever lost, it was like debatable whether he lost. And in theory, he didn't ever lose except like a disqualification for illegal elbows really early in his career. He also did fight a lot of really great champions, so he does have an amazing resume. He was just fantastically skilled, but the problem is, and this is the tough part, in fact, I've just realized it, I think I know I'm going to compare him to. I'm going to compare him to Bill Belichick. He is the best, but he also cheats, even though I think the cheating part is somewhat unnecessary and actually somewhat takes away from the being the best part, but also might be, unfortunately, part of the mentality of being the best at all costs. So I'd maybe make him like Bill Belichick. Some people don't like him, but he is just fucking the shit, and you can't deny it. He's just too good.
Good stuff. All right, that was.
It seems like a terrible person, though. Seems like an actually terrible person. If you don't know Monty, some of the stuff he's done in real life is really wild. Like, he's actually done shit. Like, I believe one time he crashed into a woman who was pregnant and just ran away from the car, but then ran back to the car to take his money and his phone, and then ran away from the car again. So, like, it's some of the stuff he's done is wild. Also, I believe it's implied he actually just beat his wife like one time in Vegas or something meant like that. So, and she like went to the police or something. So, unfortunately, he does seem like a pretty egregious human, but he is mega at MMA, which is at the end of the day beating people up. So I don't here's the thing, Monty, this is going to sound crazy to you, I don't see those two things as incredibly disparate, but to others they're like, I don't get it, how can he be so good in sports but then in real life he's a fucking maniac? It's like, I'm crazy, guy. It's crazy. You mean the guy whose dream is to punch your face in and doesn't mind you punching his face in might be a bit unhinged, it's out there, isn't it? It's a spicy one. And he's probably taking brain damage. Just they all have. Come on, they all have.
This ETE, and also it's probably one of those circumstances too, where if you have a hammer, everything else is a nail, right? That's how look. Beating people is the way he solved all of his problems in his life.
Exactly.
Are we surprised when he applies it outside of the sport?
Yes.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll end this show. We got to all the viewer questions. We'll be back with more rosters. We're going to start probably lining up some guests for some deep dive off-season conversations as well for you guys, and touching on more historic content. So remember, drop those historic content suggestions. We did the .A awards that you guys asked for last week. Keep dropping them in there. We've got time until the end of the year to finish up with some more cool historic episodes. So we'll see you guys next week. Till then.